Chapter 368. Yishui Han, it's you. Rong Lu's eyes were filled with killing intent when he saw the people from Divine Palace. Blood qi surged out of his body, dyeing the sky red. Yishui Han didn't back down either. He waved his hand, and a translucent ice sword appeared. Cold air surged out, and ice flowers appeared in the air. Although Divine Palace had only sent one person, Yishui Han was without a doubt the strongest of the four. He had been at the top of the second calamity for over 100 years, and he was one of the top experts of the Rong tribe. Sword and palm collided. Blood qi and cold qi surged. Saber light appeared, and a blood-red light flashed. I haven't seen you in 100 years, but you haven't improved at all. Yishui Han snorted and blocked the saber light with his ice sword. He took another step forward, and frost surged out. Divine Palace's #1 swordsman is disappointing. Rong Lu flipped his palm, and a vast blood-red light crushed down. He opened a blood-red world. Yishui Han formed a sword with his fingers, and thousands of ice flowers gathered, turning into countless sword lights that pierced through the blood-red light. The two sides collided, and the air shook violently. The two were both forced back 3 steps, and it was impossible to tell who had the upper hand. On the other side, Ning Qin held Yama's sword, and a purple light gathered the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Wan Feng Chen swung his saber to block, using speed against speed. At the same time, Meng Xuanji leapt into the air, her golden feather drawing thousands of rays of golden light. Together with Ning Qin, they fought the current Sacred Land's leader. Do you want to take back the Phoenix origin? Wan Feng Chen's body was like a willow, and he avoided the sword lights. I've already taken it back. Ning Qin took another step forward. Where's Bai Jiang? Wan Feng Chen blocked the sword and used his left hand to push back the incoming golden feather. He's not dead, but he's crippled. He won't be a threat for now. Ning Qin took 10 steps back and used his yuan to activate Yama's sword. Blood qi surged, and the sword was unsheathed. The phoenix was noble, and it represented the most divine power in the world. His doppelganger combined the 2 phoenix essences and forcefully suppressed the will within the sword. Purple light lit up the world, and a strange aura appeared between heaven and earth. Yama's sword that had been silent since Yama's death finally reappeared. Seeing this, Wan Feng Chen didn't dare to be careless. His rainbow blade transformed into a sky full of blade lights that blocked in front of him. The purple sword light rushed in and collided with the red maple leaves in the sky. In an instant, the power of the sword and the saber collided violently. The swift and fierce air currents surged and scattered in all directions. Ning Chen's body was slightly weaker. He took 2 steps back and a trace of red appeared on the corner of his mouth. Miss Meng, go help us deal with Rong Lu, said Ning Chen. But Meng Xuanji's expression changed. Nothing must happen to the guests of the Marquis' mansion. I can handle this, Ning Chen said in a low voice. On the other side of the battlefield, Yishui Han swung his sword to disperse the bloody light in front of him. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he said, Marquis, Yishui Han will remember your good intentions. You're welcome, Ning Chen replied calmly. Meng Xuanji didn't know what the former was planning, but she could only temporarily withdraw from the battle. Be careful, I won't hold back anymore. Wan Feng Chen's expression became serious. When he received Ning Chen's sword move just now, he roughly understood what Ning Chen wanted to do. However, such a dangerous thing was really not a good idea. Just go all out. Right now, you're the most suitable person, said Ning Chen seriously. Wan Feng Chen sighed inside and didn't say anything else. He took a step forward, and his aura soared. Within a dazzling light, the aura of the 5th Xiantian tribulation was released. In the face of this pressure, Ning Chen didn't dare to be careless. He gathered the power of his 2 phoenixes' core. Blood-red light rippled through heaven and earth. His powerful phoenix bloodline shook the entire imperial city. Within the Marquis' mansion, Yao Man and the others narrowed their eyes when they saw Wanfeng's surging aura. They had still underestimated him. This kind of power was far too abnormal. Seeing this kind of powerful bloodline power again, it was 100 times stronger than before. Rong Lu dodged the ice divine sword's tip and moved, wanting to take it. However, golden light tore through the sky and the golden feather blocked his path. Within the Marquis' mansion, Yao Man and the others also hesitated. This kind of power was too tempting. However, the third Xiantian tribulation expert within the Marquis' mansion made them wary. In the current situation, as long as they took action, it would mean completely shedding all pretenses. It would be fine if they succeeded, but if they failed, it wouldn't be wise to provoke such a powerful enemy before the mission had even begun. After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, the three of them had no choice but to suppress their impulses and continue to not interfere. The other 9 Xiantian experts of the 4 extremities also looked at the 3 people within the Marquis' mansion who hadn't taken action yet. Although they didn't participate in the battle, they still maintained the highest level of vigilance. Inside and outside the Marquis' mansion, one chain of restraints after another caused the situation to enter a stalemate. In the air above the Marquis' mansion, Ning Chen was facing off against the 5th Xiantian tribulation Wan Feng Chen. This Marquis has been pretty good to us. Do you want to help? Tribulation Flame smiled. No need. That expert hasn't even made a move yet. Why should we join in? Tribulation Wind laughed. Hey, you can't say that. The demonic Buddha said that as monks, we should be merciful, continued Tribulation Flame. Then if he dies, we'll help him collect his corpse, laughed Tribulation Wind. Yao Man listened to their conversation. Although she was disgusted with the Jiming Marquis, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of displeasure. She even suspected that even if she was the one in danger, these 2 fellow disciples would still look at her with a smile and wouldn't feel anything. Outside the Marquis' mansion, Jian Bodhi and Li Luo had concealed their auras. They sighed as they watched the battle above the Marquis' mansion. Sect Master, it really isn't a coincidence that the Eternal Night God's sect couldn't defeat the Grand Xia, said Jian Bodhi softly. This was the first time he had met such a young man. It was hard to imagine what kind of ties he had that allowed him to persist until now. In my life, I've only ever admired 2 people. One was the master who created the golden age of Confucianism, and the other was the Jiming Marquis. Back then, I really did want to first defeat the Grand Xia and then find a way to stop the 7 extinction heavens from descending. But this person's existence made me change my mind, said Li Luo. Above the Marquis' mansion, under the pressure of life and death, the phoenix origin that had been resisting the fusion finally began to change. Threads of phoenix origin energy flowed through his body, automatically helping to heal his injuries. Now that he had an opportunity, Ning Chen immediately scattered his true essence and mortal body's blood qi. In an instant, a bloody mist filled the air and his avatar began to fade away, showing signs of dissipating. His mortal body's blood qi dissipated and his true essence flowed away. All that was left was the phoenix blood that the 2 phoenixes had given him. The final repulsive force also disappeared. The phoenix origin quickly spread and reformed into a new host. When the phoenix body appeared, its aura suddenly changed. Phoenix origin poured into the underworld king's sword, and a dazzling purple light soared into the sky. Thunder rumbled as the 3rd Xiantian tribulation arrived. The sudden change shocked everyone present. Looking at the red-clothed figure in the air, shock appeared in their eyes. Retreat! Seeing this, Wan Fengchen's figure flashed and he retreated from the battle. He instantly appeared on the other side and pushed Meng Xuanji away with his blade. Then he quickly retreated with Rong Lu. The other 9 Xiantian experts of the 4 extreme realms also didn't dare delay and left with him. Yishui Han's eyes narrowed, but he didn't chase after them. His strength was roughly on par with Rong Lu's, so there was nothing he could do even if he chased after him. Furthermore, the Rong clan's physique was special and difficult to deal with. Wan Fengchen, West. The red-clothed figure instantly chased after them and transmitted her voice. Hearing this, Wan Fengchen immediately changed directions and flew west. The thunder in the sky grew deeper and deeper. The group hurriedly headed west. Just as they entered the wilderness, a purple-gold sword appeared behind Rong Lu. Rong Lu felt a chill run down his back. He immediately stopped and sent a palm strike at the sword. In that instant, Wan Fengchen and the others had already flown several hundred meters away. Ning Chen's figure flashed, dodging the palm strike. He released his aura and immediately, endless lightning descended, enveloping the two of them. Chapter 369. Lightning filled the sky, howling and surging. The momentum of the lightning falling from the sky could even frighten ghosts and gods. Rong Lu trembled. With a flip of his palm, he forcefully clashed with the lightning tribulation descending from the sky. Thunder roared, and its divine might shook the world. Heaven's might was immediately enraged by being defied. The might of the lightning tribulation suddenly increased, reaching the level of one of the three calamities. At the same time, the red-clothed figure was as swift as a startled swan. Lightning descended, but it was dodged time and time again. The trembling earth collapsed and disintegrated under the lightning tribulation. How can you be so capable? Rong Lu was shocked by Ning Chen's lightning-fast speed. Disbelief filled his eyes. Don't you understand? This is the phoenix origin energy you always wanted. As the lightning tribulation descended, Ning Chen moved. Thousands of lightning bolts fell on the ground, rumbling and trembling as the ground sank. So, you were the one who snatched the phoenix origin from Pai Jiang. Rong Lu shouted angrily as he received another lightning bolt. His qi and blood surged. It's too late for you to guess now. You can go to hell in this lightning tribulation. Ning Chen walked on the shadows, constantly moving through the lightning tribulation. Although they were less than 300 meters apart, the might of each tribulation was completely different. Rong Lu received the most terrifying punishment for interfering with the heavenly tribulation. The lightning tribulation turned red, and a horrifying aura caused the space around him to twist. In just a few breaths of time, the lightning tribulation descending on the Rong race leader reached the second calamity. Furthermore, it continued to strengthen. After Ning Chen attracted the lightning tribulation, he quickly put some distance between him and Rong Lu. He did not want to get involved in this terrifying heavenly tribulation, so he moved around, avoiding the lightning. Rong Lu was furious. The increasingly stronger lightning tribulation was, the more strenuous it became. In the past 30,000 years, very few people dared to interfere with another person's heavenly tribulation. After all, the price of doing so was something even the three calamities could not bear. The raging red lightning bolts filled the sky, turning 300 meters into a sea of lightning. When Rong Lu saw that the situation was not right, he used all his quintessence to block the sea of lightning and immediately tried to leave. You can't leave. Ning Chen snorted coldly. His figure flashed, and he chased after Rong Lu. The heavenly tribulation continuously descended, engulfing the two once more. The sea of lightning that Rong Lu could not escape shocked and enraged him. He gathered his quintessence, wanting to kill the disaster before him first. With a hong sound, the heavens once again descended with fury. Red tribulation lightning descended, blocking the path ahead. Rong Lu had no choice but to change the direction of his palm and block the furious lightning. With a violent collision, blood splattered everywhere. Damn it! He knew that if this continued, his life would be in danger even if his body was special. Rong Lu gritted his teeth and opened his palms. Blood mist surged around him as he used the forbidden technique of the Rong tribe. Endless blood light soared into the sky and his body was temporarily raised to the third disaster level. Evil Rong 9 transformations, open. The terrifying blood might shook the heavens and earth. Within 1,000 feet, everything collapsed. The sky collapsed and the earth caved in. It was a horrifying scene. It was like the end of the world. Ning Chen quickly retreated, avoiding the shockwaves and standing 1,000 feet away. Under the terrifying forbidden world, the scarlet tribulation clouds collapsed and scattered in all directions. The world became clear again. After the restriction, Rong Lu's body was bleeding profusely. The foundation of his cultivation was severely damaged, and he staggered and vomited blood. To kill or not to kill, Ning Chen and Wan Feng Chen had the same thought. After a while, they made up their minds. "Take him away," said Ning Chen. With that, a red robe flashed and the Yama divine weapon pierced through the air, stabbing toward Rong Lu's heart. Wan Feng Chen understood and moved his feet. He instantly appeared in front of Rong Lu and blocked the sword with his blade. "Go!" Wan Feng Chen quickly left with the heavily injured Rong tribe's king. The 9 Xiantian experts followed. Ning Chen waved his hand and the Yama divine weapon returned to its sheath. After 2 steps, the red robe scattered and disappeared. Time passed day after day. In the Marquis manor in the imperial city of the Grand Xia, the 5 people who had been politely asked to stay finally left, each with their own thoughts. The appearance of the Yama divine weapon gave Yaman, Yishui Han, and the others a warning. The waters of the divine prefecture were much deeper than they had imagined. The 4 of them were very wary of this existence. Or rather, all the peak Xiantian experts in the 4 regions were very wary of it. If they wanted to go back, they had to build the 4 directions divine tower as soon as possible and send the origin energy of the divine prefecture of the eastern region over. As for whether to bring it back or not, that was up to the palace lord and the demonic Buddha. During the few days in the Marquis manor, they had a rough understanding of the divine prefecture. The rest of the situation had to be seen by them personally. In the dark abyss of the eternal night divine sect, a purple figure slowly descended from the sky. It was the second lord of the eternal night divine sect, Zong Qianqiu, who had been severely injured by Zong Qianqiu a long time ago. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Zong Qianqiu knelt down and said with a familiar smile. "Zong Qianqiu, prepare to open the extreme sky grand formation." Yama King's voice reverberated between heaven and earth. "Yes." Zong Qianqiu said respectfully. When the extreme sky grand formation was opened, the eternal night would appear. The eternal night had once said that the mortal world would be dark for 100 years. Zong Qianqiu left. Yama King's voice sounded again. "Chu Li, yes, Your Majesty." Chu Li knelt down. Before Zong Qianqiu completes the extreme sky grand formation, find the 3rd divine beast's origin as soon as possible. Chu Li's eyes flashed. He explained, "Your Majesty, the eternal night divine scripture is affected by the chaos scroll. It's hard to find the hiding places of these divine beasts in a short time. Go to the Void Temple." "I will help you," said the Yama King calmly. "Yes." Chu Li bowed and respectfully left. Within the Grand Xia's imperial city, Ning Chen walked out, thinking about something as he walked toward the imperial palace. Passers-by bowed to him, not daring to block his path. Suddenly, he heard the sound of an argument. Everyone on the street blocked his path. The young lady's carriage had accidentally knocked over an old man, breaking the old man's porcelain bottle. The old man's status wasn't ordinary either. He stood up and cursed her. His vulgar words were unpleasant to the ear. The young lady's eyes were filled with tears. She didn't know what to do. She could only quietly cry. When the Martial Marquis arrived, the onlookers opened up a path for him. Hong Yi walked past, not stopping at all. "Lord Martial Marquis, please uphold justice for this old man." The old man hastily walked over and knelt down. Ning Chen came back to his senses. He looked at the old man, then at the onlookers. He frowned and asked, "What is it?" The old man tearfully explained the situation. His sad and pitiful appearance was completely different from his previous arrogance. "Lord Martial Marquis, this porcelain bottle is a treasure passed down from my ancestor. It has been over 1,000 years. This old man's body is cheap, so it doesn't matter if I was knocked over, but this bottle is the life of my family. It can't be broken for nothing. What about you? Do you have anything to say? Ning Chen looked at the woman in front of him and asked calmly. Lord Marshal Marquis. Lord Marshal Marquis, I didn't do it on purpose. The woman was at a loss. Ning Chen took 2 steps forward and slowly picked up a piece of porcelain. He looked at it and sighed in his heart. A person's greed could easily break a person's bottom line. It was truly lamentable. The onlookers whispered to each other. Some were mocking, some were rejoicing in other people's misfortune, some were sympathizing with the old man and the woman. Different people's hearts were cold. Some people saw the truth, but they didn't want to cause trouble, so they didn't stand up. Mother, this grandpa poured it himself. A child's voice sounded out from the crowd. It wasn't loud, so it was drowned out by the crowd's whispers. It was unknown how many people heard it. Don't speak nonsense. The woman's expression changed. She quickly covered the child's mouth and reprimanded him. Ning Chen acted as if he didn't know. He looked at the old man and calmly said, What do you want? This matter is settled. This porcelain bottle is worth over 1,000 taels. I don't dare to delay Lord Marshal Marquis' time. Furthermore, this young lady didn't do it on purpose. Just compensate me with 800 taels. The old man reluctantly said. Hearing this number, the young lady's body trembled. Although her family's situation could be considered well off, 800 taels was not a small amount. It would cause her family to bear a huge burden. Do you have any objections? Ning Chen looked at the woman and asked. I have no objections. The woman's voice trembled. What about you, what do you think? Ning Chen looked at the onlookers and asked. Lord Marshal Marquis is wise. Everyone agreed. Lamentable. Ning Chen deeply sighed and turned to leave. He was once again disappointed. Greedy, cowardly, indifferent. Was there really any hope for such a person? For the first time, Jiming's heart wavered. That day, in the Marquis' study, Grand Xia's Marquis and the Eternal Night Church's leader held candles and talked until late at night. It was rumored that the underworld king was arrogant and hated the ugliness of human nature. 30,000 years ago, he descended to the human world and used his unparalleled divine might to massacre the 5 regions. He only left behind a small inheritance, hoping that the human race would remember the pain, abandon the ugliness, and move forward again. Unfortunately, 30,000 years later, the underworld king was once again disappointed. This time, without a doubt, his descent would be an even more terrifying apocalypse. Xianhua. After walking 100 steps, Ning Chen finally stopped and said. Lord Marquis. A figure walked out and respectfully said. Take them to the government and tell that woman that this is the last chance I'm giving her. If she doesn't cherish it, no one can help her. Ning Chen calmly said. Yes. Xianhua respectfully accepted the order. With the Eternal Night Church's matter and the Alien Realm's plan, Ning Chen didn't have time to waste. He continued to walk towards the Imperial Palace. At this moment, Jiming's eyes changed. He looked to the west with a gloomy expression. With a wave of his hand, the Chaos Scroll flew out. Its light dimmed as if it was suppressed by an extremely powerful force. Among the 10 scrolls of the heavenly tomes, the light scroll was undoubtedly the most terrifying one. Not only did it have knowledge of the past and present, but it could also derive the matters of the world. It was controlled by the Eternal Night Church and was a great threat. The Chaos Scroll's existence was the only thing that could suppress the light scroll. In the past, it was controlled by Fan Lingyue, but now it was controlled by Ning Chen. Its only purpose was to suppress the power of the light scroll. The Underworld King. Ning Chen looked to the west. Without a doubt, only the Underworld King could suppress the Chaos Scroll. The power he could descend was stronger than before. Eternal Night Church, Void Shrine. Chu Li looked at the scripture floating in the void. A dazzling light flashed through her beautiful eyes. So there were two people from 1,000 years ago in the divine prefecture. Dao Kuei, Jiang Wangji, Master, Ji Taisher. Chapter 370. The Lord of Hell had suppressed the Chaos volume, and the Eternal Night scripture was able to work. It revealed the mysteries of heaven and found the wild beasts hiding everywhere. The nine-headed beast and the phoenix were dead. After tens of thousands of years, they had completely fallen into a deep sleep and assimilated with the earth. There were not many living beasts left. Only Tao Tai, Yazi, Tao Wu, and Xia Zhi were left. Chu Li looked at the whereabouts of Tao Tai and Xia Zhi and frowned. It was not difficult to find the two wild beasts. However, with Dao Kuei and the headmaster, it was almost impossible to get them. What she did not expect was that the divine beast of the underworld, Xia Zhi, was in the Great Xia Academy. Other than Tao Tai and Xia Zhi, Yazi was far away in the four extremes. After the fight for the origin of Phoenix last time, the Great Xia Academy and the four extremes Holy Lands were already vigilant. It would be more difficult to go to the four extremes to get the origin of the divine beasts again. In the current situation, getting the origin of Tao Wu might be the best choice. The Eternal Night scripture closed and rose into the void again. Wisps of strange aura lingered in the air, and it fell into a short silence. Chu Li turned and walked out of the void temple. It would take some time to set up the ultimate sky array. Before that, she had to do her best to complete the task. In the Great Xia Palace, Ning Chen walked over and whispered a few words in Qing Ning's ear. Qing Ning's eyes flashed with surprise. When she came back to her senses, she nodded slightly. Qing Ning knew the importance of the task. Without delay, she left the imperial city immediately. In the Weiyang Palace, Ning Chen and Zhang Sun discussed the Eternal Night sect and the people from the alien land in detail and made a plan for the future. Everything had its priority. The matter of Lord of Hell was the most important thing now. If they did not stop it with all their might, it would be an irreversible disaster. In comparison, the purpose of the 5 people from the homeland of West Buddha was still unclear. It was not easy to push them to the opposite side. He left Rong Lu alive to contain the 5 people. Before solving the problem of Lord of Hell, he had no time to care about other things. He stayed in the Weiyang Palace for half a day. When the sun was setting, Ning Chen left the palace and returned to the Marquis residence. The person in charge of the Eternal Night sect now should be Chu Li. This was a big problem. His alliance with the Eternal Night sect leader was not unbreakable. The biggest difference was this woman. Under the current circumstances, he couldn't afford to lose an ally like the Eternal Night hierarch. The matter of Chu Li was indeed a thorny one. Unexpectedly, in order to destroy the relationship between Rong Lu and Bai Jiang, he let Chu Li go. In the end, it became a big hidden danger. The moment Jian Bodi and Li Luo returned, they immediately went into seclusion to recover from their injuries. Last time at Phoenix Perch Mountain, the two of them had suffered heavy injuries. Later on, in order to take back the Phoenix origin, they had been suppressing their injuries. The Nether King was indeed too powerful. Only after receiving his attacks head-on did one understand the despair of being unable to resist the heavens. After 2 battles, the battle strength of the Marquis residence had completely fallen to the bottom. There was no telling when the Eternal Night hierarch's main body would come out. Now that his avatar and the sword Bodhi were in seclusion to recuperate, the Marquis forces were stretched thin. Ning Chen stood in the courtyard, looking at the blood moon rising in the east. His frown deepened. Today, the Nether King temporarily suppressed the power of the Chaos Scroll. His purpose was actually not hard to guess. It was most likely to find the divine beast hidden in the world. He knew that there was a Tao Tai in the Chizhou Mountains and a Yazi in the 4 extremes. The Tao Tai was protected by Senior Dao Kuei, so there shouldn't be any problems. The Yazi was far away in the 4 extremes. After the fight for the Phoenix origin, Chu Li should also understand that it was easy to enter the Ascension Valley but difficult to leave. It was unlikely that he would risk his life. What he was most worried about now was that there were still divine beasts in the divine Great Land that he didn't know the whereabouts of. If Chu Li set out, it would be difficult for him to stop him. In the world, in the art of divination, apart from the Ming scroll, the most powerful one was the headmaster. Qing Ning had already gone to ask, but she didn't know if she could make it this time. The bright moon was moving west. In the backyard of the Marquis residence, a stream of light flashed past. Qing Ning walked out and looked at the young man in the courtyard. She said with a serious expression, "The headmaster said that in the divine Great Land, there is a divine beast called the Swanni. It should be hiding somewhere in the southern wasteland. No one knows the specific location. It's troublesome." Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. If even the headmaster didn't know, then no one in the world would know. "I'm going to the southern wasteland. I'll leave it to Sister Qing Ning to talk to the Empress." Time was tight. Ning Chen didn't dare to delay any longer. He instructed and prepared to leave immediately. "Okay, be careful," Qing Ning reminded him softly. Ning Chen nodded. He waved his hand and a purple light flashed past. The Yama heavenly sword flew out. His red clothes scattered and disappeared. Outside the imperial city, a beautiful figure stood quietly under the moonlight. Her snow-white clothes danced in the night wind. Ning Chen stopped and looked at the woman under the moonlight. He was puzzled and asked, "Why are you here?" "The southern wasteland is too big. You can't find it all by yourself," Mu Qingxue said and turned to walk towards the south. He said, "Let's go quickly. Otherwise, it will be too late." "Okay." Ning Chen wasn't a procrastinator. He calmed himself down and immediately followed him. The two of them moved together and rushed towards the southern wasteland. Two streaks of light flashed under the moonlight. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. The southern wasteland, the vast wasteland south of the barbarian dynasty, was the most barren place in the divine Great Land. There were almost no signs of human habitation. The harsh and changeable climate made this place a forgotten place. For thousands of years, no one was willing to set foot here. Heavy rain poured down, washing this barren land. Under a red umbrella in the rain, two figures walked side by side. One of them was dressed in red and had an extraordinary temperament, attracting everyone's attention. The other person was much more ordinary, just an ordinary person. On this barren land, there were actually two people moving forward. This was definitely not a normal thing. "Young master, be careful not to get your clothes wet," Shang Han said with concern. "It's fine," Yin Wugo said calmly with a faint smile. The person under the umbrella revealed his face. The red mole between his eyebrows was dazzling. It was Yin Wugo, the former head of the red-clothed guards of the imperial court. Since he left 5 years ago, there had been no news of him. His blood-red sword had been sealed for a long time. His blood-stained hand was gradually washed away by the rain. Just at this moment, two figures passed by 5 miles away from the red umbrella. One of them suddenly paused. Ning Chen stared into the distance as a glint of light flashed in his eyes. It was him. So he came here. "What is it?" Mu Qingxue softly asked the person beside him. "It's nothing. Let's continue." Ning Chen came back to his senses. At the same time, Yin Wugo also stopped and looked into the distance. His lips curled. "Young master, why did you stop?" asked Shang Han. "It's the department head," Yin Wugo softly said. Shang Han was surprised. She was grateful, but also a bit worried. She was grateful because 5 years ago, if it weren't for the department head, they wouldn't have been able to leave the imperial court. She was worried that the department head would go back on his word and bring the young master back. After all, the young master had already stepped into the Xiantian realm. To any power, he was a rare power. Don't worry. Yin Wugo knew what Shang Han was thinking. He faintly smiled and said, if the department head really came to bring me back, he wouldn't be the department head anymore. Let's go. Okay. Shang Han nodded. She held the umbrella and continued to walk forward with the person she treasured the most in her life. The two people who passed by each other didn't meet in the end. The fire in the Imperial Court's West Hall was the final end. The promise Ji Ming made was also fulfilled in that fire. The past was the past. Not meeting was the best result. The person who left the Jianghu and the Imperial Court went north. He washed away his impurities and would never be stained with red again. No impurities, no impurities. His dark red clothes would never be stained with impurities. Northern Meng Imperial Court. A memorial was sent to the palace. It was originally a small matter. However, because the people who went to deal with it died, it became a big matter. This was a memorial requesting the emperor to use the imperial court's offerings. After Ming Yu saw it, a strange expression flashed across her delicate face. A Xiantian expert secretly built an ice tower upstream of the Ling River. What was going on? Ming Yu didn't see anything special about it. However, she felt that something was wrong. No one would build a tower for no reason. Moreover, it was a powerful Xiantian expert. There were indeed Xiantian-level offerings in the palace. However, they didn't have much lifespan left. They were buried deep under the treasures used to suppress fate. Unless the dynasty was facing a crisis, they couldn't be easily used. Every dynasty had its own resources. However, these resources couldn't be seen for long. Once they were out in the world, they couldn't come back. Men, summon Yang Ho, Ming Yu ordered. Yes. An hour later, Yang Hong entered the palace. After seeing the memorial that Ming Yu passed to him, he frowned. I'll go take a look, Yang Hong said. Be careful, Ming Yu said seriously. Your Majesty, don't worry. Yang Hong responded, then turned around and walked out. After Yang Hong left, Ming Yu still felt uneasy. She wrote a letter and called a round-blade Imperial Guard over. She said seriously, send it to Tian Qi immediately. Yes. The round-blade Imperial Guard received the order and quickly walked out of the hall. Sister Amethyst, Bei Meng might be in trouble. Ming Yu looked at the girl standing beside her and said softly. She had a feeling that this matter wasn't so simple. The bad guy had said that a woman's sixth sense was nonsensical. However, sometimes, one had to believe it. In his eyes, she might still be that little girl from back then. However, she had indeed grown up. Do you need me to invite the Jiming Marquis? Amethyst asked softly. Many years ago, the military advisor had told her that if Bei Meng couldn't solve anything after her death, she should invite the Marquis of Xia. At that time, she didn't understand why the military advisor had told her that. Only now did she understand what the military advisor meant. Ming Yu shook her head. Her eyes dimmed. She said, no, it's already hard enough for him. I can't increase his burden. Your Majesty's matter won't be a burden to the Jiming Marquis, Amethyst replied. No, I will solve it myself. Ming Yu shook her head stubbornly. She was the emperor of Bei Meng. She couldn't always rely on him. Amethyst didn't say anything else. She had personally witnessed Her Majesty's growth. The little girl from back then had really grown up. She was working hard to catch up to the military advisor and the Marquis. Chapter 371. In the southern wasteland of the Divine Land, the two had been searching for a day and a night. Time passed slowly, but they still couldn't find Tao Wu. Since the last catastrophe of the 5 regions, all the divine beasts in the world had hidden themselves. They rarely showed themselves, and few people knew where they were. In order to hide their aura, most of the divine beasts chose to sleep. As time passed, they gradually assimilated with the earth and could no longer wake up. Tao Wu was one of the few divine beasts that was still alive. However, because it was in the southern wasteland, where there were few people, its whereabouts were very mysterious. The two were already very fast, but no matter how fast they were, they couldn't be faster than Chu Li, who had grasped Tao Wu's whereabouts. Wu Guan appeared with a murderous aura. The green spear fell from the sky with great force. Amidst the violent swaying, the 300-meter-long ground cracked open. Numerous huge cracks spread out, crisscrossing each other. It was a shocking sight. Sand flew up, covering the sky. Suddenly, there was a change in the silent wasteland. Roar! A deafening beast roar sounded. The earth rumbled and trembled. In the sand, a ferocious-looking giant beast appeared. It looked like a tiger, but it wasn't. It had a human face, tiger feet, pig teeth, and a ferocious appearance. It opened its mouth and tried to swallow the person in front of it. Mere beast, don't overestimate yourself. Chu Li snorted. Green light flowed on the body of the spear, which was full of patterns. It pierced through the air with the sharpest edge. With a bang, blood splattered dozens of feet. Although it was a ferocious beast that had lived for tens of thousands of years, it still quickly fell into a disadvantage in front of Wu Guan, who had outstanding combat power. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the surrounding ground red. The cold wind whistled. The dancing armor was as swift as a feather. As the figure moved, the long spear in his hand turned into a green swan. It cut through the Tao Wu's body and left terrible wounds. The furious beast roared continuously, but it couldn't stop the outcome of defeat. In the rain of blood, the giant body fell down with a loud bang. It was difficult for it to stand up again. Chu Li waved his hand. The green spear pierced through the body. The dark gray origin of the wild beast flew out and fell into his hand. Let's go. After the mission was completed, Chu Li didn't delay. His figure flashed and headed north. Not long after Chu Li left, red clothes gathered in the distance. Knowing destiny rushed over after sensing the fluctuations of the battle. After seeing the Tao Wu's corpse on the ground, his expression changed. The red light rushed towards the north. At the same time, it released all of its aura to inform Mu Qingxue to come quickly. The speeding light left a bright red trail in the sky. Ning Chen knew the importance of the desolate beast's origin essence, so he drove his phoenix origin to its limits. The red light instantly vanished, astonishingly fast. 300 miles away, Chu Li felt the aura behind him getting closer and closer. His expression turned cold as he sped up and headed north. At the end of the southern wasteland, two figures were walking one after the other. At this moment, the young man in red stopped. Shanghan, moved to the side. Yin Wugo turned around and looked into the distance. Shang Han was slightly startled and didn't know what was going on. However, he still listened to the former and walked behind him. His crimson robes fluttered in the wind, and a blood-red sword flew out. The blood-red sword was unsheathed, and a bleak blood-red light illuminated the world. The swordsman held his sword, and the red mole on his forehead glowed with a bright red light. With a swing of his sword, the wind and clouds within 1,000 feet changed. The sword that hadn't been used in 5 years had reappeared today. The surging sword intent left behind terrifying sword scars in the surroundings, causing even the sun to lose its color. 5 miles away, Chu Li's expression changed. He didn't have time to stop himself, so he condensed his Yuan Qi into a spear and met the attack. The two of them clashed. Facing Wu Guan, a sword that had been hidden for 5 years suddenly appeared. The two of them both retreated 3 steps. They were actually evenly matched. An unfamiliar expert blocked his path. Chu Li's expression turned cold, but he could also see that this person's move just now was abnormal. It was impossible for him to use it again. Lord C, this sword is to repay your kindness from back then. let's not meet again. Yin Wugo waved his hand and put away his sword. He turned and left. With that, Ning Chen appeared. Looking at the young man in the distance, he calmly said, let's not meet again. After blocking Wu Guan, Yin Wugo left without any hesitation. From now on, it was as if the two of them had said their goodbyes. They would never meet again. Chu Li, I don't want to fight with you. Please let go of the desolate beast's origin essence. Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He had promised the Eternal Night Cult Master that he wouldn't harm Chu Li's life. Although he had told countless lies in his life, he wasn't willing to break his promise to his allies. Wishful thinking. A cold glint flashed through Chu Li's eyes. He took a step forward and moved his green spear, attacking like fire. Ning Chen retreated. His red clothes were as fast as red light. In the blink of an eye, he turned back. The King of Hell's divine weapon was in his hand. Seeing such a terrifying speed, Chu Li was shocked. He changed the direction of his spear and blocked the sword. A sonorous sound of collision rang out. The King of Hell's divine sword instantly changed its direction. It didn't meet Chu Li head-on, but moved away as soon as it touched him. With the extremely fast red light, each sword was faster than the previous one. Although Chu Li had the advantage in cultivation and foundation, he still felt that it wasn't easy to deal with the speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. After fighting for a while, a beautiful figure in white appeared in the battle. She unsheathed the shadow sword and surrounded Wu Guan. The two fastest people in the world teamed up. Chu Li immediately felt the pressure multiplying. Wounds immediately appeared on his armor. At the same time, a red and green figure flashed past in the distance. It was Li Luo, who was supposed to be recuperating in the Marquis estate. After knowing that Ning Chen had left the Marquis estate and headed for the southern wasteland, he immediately rushed over. The aftermath of the three's battle was vast and mighty. The closer he was, the clearer he could feel it. Li Luo increased his speed, afraid that he would be a step too late. No one knew that 100 li away, a man in black clothes was also rushing over. A few days ago, his Qi Si was destroyed by Mu Qingshue's sword outside Ascension Valley. His cultivation was almost crippled. Because he was worried about Chu Li's safety, he used half of his blood as the price to ask the King of Hell to grant him power. He temporarily recovered half of his body and came over to help. Almost at the same time, Li Luo and Bai Jiang arrived at the battlefield. They drew their weapons and entered the battle in an instant. With a bang, the four swords collided. The turbulent air currents brought up sand in the sky. Traitor, it's you again. Bai Jiang looked at the man in front of him with murderous intent in his eyes. Since the Knowing Destiny Marquis appeared in the Four Extremities domain and the middle spiritual region with two bodies, this person's identity was self-evident. The sudden appearance of an expert in the Divine Prefecture and coincidentally when the hierarch was seriously injured and pretending to be dead, with the hint of the Knowing Destiny double bodies, the truth was very obvious. The two appeared at the same time and were both seriously injured. They were no longer in peak condition. Under the balance of the battle didn't change. Ning Chen and Mu Qingxue trapped Wu Guan with their swords, determined to take back the Swanee's origin. However, at this moment, another change occurred. Chu Li's body suddenly trembled. With a painful groan, the black gas around him surged. The King of Hell wanted to use his body to descend. A terrifying aura instantly covered the sky. The King of Hell opened his eyes and his divine aura surged out. Seeing this, Ning Chen, Mu Qingxue, and Li Luo's expressions changed. They turned into flowing lights and quickly retreated. Traitor! The King of Hell moved and instantly arrived in front of Li Luo. With a flip of his palm, a terrifying palm energy swept out. A waterfall of blood splattered. Li Luo, who was injured, couldn't even block a single attack. He was sent flying with blood all over his body. Take him away. Ning Chen was shocked and shouted. His body turned into a red flowing light and his sword pierced through the sky to buy some time for the two to retreat. Phoenix speed. Stupid. The King of Hell's figure moved again. Before the blink of an eye, he had already avoided the knowing destiny state and blocked in front of Mu Qingxue. With a palm strike, heaven and earth trembled. The divine aura descended again. At the critical moment, Ning Chen quickly turned back and blocked in front of Mu Qingxue. The King of Hell's divine weapon was upgraded to the extreme and blocked the divine aura. However, the divine aura wasn't something a human could block. With a bang, Ning Chen's red clothes were sent flying. Before the aftershock dissipated, Ning Chen's white clothes were also dyed red. Ning Chen retreated a dozen steps and vomited. The King of Hell was so powerful that it made people despair. With just 2 moves, the 3 of them were seriously injured and lost their ability to fight. At the same time, in the knowing destiny state's manner, 2 pairs of eyes opened at the same time. They felt the danger of their doppelganger's life. However, they were more than 10,000 li away. It was already too late to save them. Luo Li, you are the same as these humans. Dirty. The King of Hell walked forward and with a flip of his palm, he gathered his divine aura and was about to eliminate the traitor in front of him. No. At this moment, a strong will of resistance rose from Chu Li's spiritual sense. The gathered palm energy instantly dissipated between heaven and earth. Chu Li, what are you doing? The King of Hell's voice was cold. Master, please spare the hierarch's life. Chu Li constantly resisted the will of the King of Hell and begged. A black aura constantly spread out. The main body strongly resisted. The will of the King of Hell that descended from the endless void separated from Chu Li's body and condensed into an illusory figure. Looking at the 3 seriously injured people, he coldly said, Pai Jiang, I'll leave the rest to you. As soon as he finished speaking, the illusory figure scattered, turning into a black aura that filled the sky and disappeared. Hurry up and leave. Chu Li anxiously shouted. Suffering the backlash of the King of Hell's descent, he staggered and couldn't stand steadily. No one can leave. Pai Jiang was furious. In the end, she was still protecting him. The head of the Wuguan sect was furious. Jealousy attacked his heart. His figure flashed and he instantly appeared in front of Chu Luo. A powerful palm energy slammed down. Chu Li's expression changed. He barely managed to use his remaining true qi to block in front of him. With a bang, he blocked the former's palm energy. Blood spilled out from the woman's mouth. Her hair was dyed red and dripped down. Take him away. Chu Li anxiously said. Behind them, Mu Qingxue, the only one who hadn't directly received the attack of the King of Hell's descent, finally managed to gather a bit of strength. He quickly took the 2 unconscious people and left. Pai Jiang was furious. He pushed Chu Li aside and was about to chase after them. Chu Li vomited blood. Although he was seriously injured, he couldn't stop his powerful will. He held his spear horizontally and refused to let him go. Seeing the person he hated getting farther and farther away, Pai Jiang's accumulated anger finally reached its limit. He lost his reason and his killing intent appeared. His palm fell. The heavily injured Chu Li was too late to dodge. The palm imprinted itself on the center of her forehead. Blood immediately splashed out and dyed her face red. The beautiful figure fell to the ground and looked at the 3 people in the distance. The light in her eyes gradually dimmed. He was fine. It was worth it. Among the 3 people in the distance, a pair of lifeless eyes subconsciously opened. The scene that entered his eyes became his last memory before he fainted. In the next moment, his eyes closed and he completely lost consciousness. Hee, in front of Chu Li, Pai Jiang looked at his right hand in disbelief. Soon after, he laughed crazily. It was so crazy and so sad. Chapter 372. In the backyard of Jiming Manor, Meng Xuanji stood in the courtyard with a worried expression, looking towards the south with eyes full of worry. It's been 2 days, why hasn't he come back yet? At this moment, a white figure flashed and appeared in the courtyard. As soon as she landed, she staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood. Save him! Before he could finish his sentence, Mu Qingxue could no longer suppress the injuries in his body. He collapsed and fainted. Meng Xuanji was startled and hurriedly supported the former. Seeing the 2 blood-stained figures brought by the woman, her pupils shrank fiercely. In the room, Ning Shi and Lu Ruoxi heard the commotion and came out one after another. When they saw the scene, their expressions changed greatly. In the secret room, the stone door opened with a bang. The Eternal Night Hierarch felt the return of his clone and came out in advance. Appearing in the courtyard, he glanced at the 2 seriously injured and dying people and said in a deep voice, "Save this kid." Meng Xuanji nodded and condensed her qi into Ji Ming's body. The Eternal Night Hierarch didn't say anything more and condensed his qi and poured it into his clone. Lu Ruoxi endured the tears in her eyes and walked into the room. She took out a pill and gave it to Mu Qingxue first, then stood quietly to the side and waited. Although Hell King's descent was limited by Chu Li's cultivation, it was still invincible. The 2 took a head-on blow and now their internal organs and meridians were seriously injured. Half an hour later, the Eternal Night Hierarch and Meng Xuanji stopped, their expressions not very good. The 2's lives were saved, but the situation was not very optimistic. When the sun set and the moon was high in the sky, Ning Chen woke up and struggled to get up. Suddenly, he felt a tightness in his chest and coughed violently a few times, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Ruoxi, who was guarding the side, was awakened and hurriedly got up to help the former. She said worriedly, "Marquis, your injuries are too serious, you can't get up." "I'm fine, what about Mu Qingxue and Li Luo?" Ning Chen asked weakly. "Miss Mu is fine. Senior Li Luo is still in a coma, but his life is not in danger for the time being," Ruoxi replied. Ning Chen nodded and said tiredly, "Push me into the palace." Ruoxi's expression changed slightly and she hurriedly said, "How are you going out?" "There's no time to care about this, hurry up," Ning Chen urged. Ruoxi didn't dare to disobey and could only push the wheelchair with tears in her eyes. Then, she helped the former sit down and covered him tightly with a fur coat. When they walked out of the room, Meng Xuanji appeared. When she saw the 2 of them, her face darkened. "Do you want to die?" "I'll explain when we get back." "Ruoxi, let's go," Ning Chen said. Knowing that no one can change the Marquis' mind, Ruoxi softly responded. Pushing the wheelchair, she headed out of the backyard. As they passed each other, Meng Xuanji clenched her fists. As she watched the 2 of them leave, her heart sank. Late at night, the streets of the imperial city were empty. There was not a single person on the streets. The cold wind blew past, chilling one to the bone. From time to time, Ruoxi would cover the figure in the wheelchair with a fur coat for fear that the former would catch wind. In the distance, on the banks of the Yi River, the Lingyan Pavilion was brightly lit. Even the cold night could not stop the nobles and scholars of the imperial city from having fun. Although the world was in chaos, the various martial marquises of the Great Xia were doing their best to prevent the flames of war from spreading to the Great Xia. Therefore, compared to the Western Front where the flames of war were raging, the Central Plains were still peaceful and prosperous. Ruoxi was a courtesan who came out of the Lingyan Pavilion. Seeing the scene in the distance that was incompatible with the world's war, her expression darkened. Before, she was ignorant. Now, she could clearly see the cruelty behind this prosperity. In the cold wind, there was a violent coughing sound. Blood dripped down. In the dark night, the 2 people didn't stop for half a step. Under the moonlight, the bustling and decaying red light district and the exhausted martial marquises were only separated by a street. At this moment, it was so glaring. Half an hour later, the 2 arrived in front of the imperial palace. The Vermilion Gates were already closed. According to the Great Xia's rules, after the Su hour, the gates were closed and no one was allowed to enter or leave. However, there were always exceptions to everything. Open the gates. Ning Qin spoke. Above the palace gates, the dragon guard on duty saw the familiar figure in the wheelchair. He was startled and immediately ordered the gates to open. The imperial concubine had already issued a decree. No matter when the martial marquises entered the palace, they were not to be stopped. In the Weiyang Palace, Ruoshi pushed Ning Qin forward. Sensing the two people's aura, Qing Ning immediately appeared. What's the matter? Seeing Ning Qin in the wheelchair, Qing Ning's eyes sank. Let's talk about it later. Take me to see the imperial concubine. Ning Qin said tiredly. Qing Ning suppressed the doubts in her heart and quickly led the two to Zhang Sun's palace. There was a knock on the door. Zhang Sun was awakened. She sat up and said, "Come in." Qing Ning opened the door and led the two in. Originally, Ning Qin was a man, so it was somewhat against the rules to directly enter. However, in the Weiyang Palace, Ning Qin didn't need to follow this rule. You. Zhang Sun saw the person in front of her and her expression changed. Just as she was about to ask, she was interrupted. Imperial concubine, I'm fine. I came here because I have something important to say. If I'm late, it might be too late. This matter was of great importance. Ning Qin didn't care about being polite. He interrupted Zhang Sun and quickly explained the situation in the southern wilderness. Imperial concubine, the Bai An's origin has been stolen. It is very likely that Underworld King will descend. The Western Front can't be delayed any longer. Now, we can't care about how many casualties we will have to pay. We must take down the Eternal Night cult in the shortest time possible. Perhaps there is a glimmer of hope. Ning Qin coughed as he spoke. Now was not the time to be soft-hearted. If Underworld King were to descend, everything would be irreversible. Zhang Sun's expression sank. She didn't expect the situation to deteriorate to this point. The Evernight army was large. If they were to attack at all costs, the casualties of the three dynasties would increase several times. Once this decision was made, it meant that hundreds of thousands of soldiers would never return. Qing Ning, grind the ink. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Sun raised her head and said in a deep voice. The Grand Xia was painstakingly supported by the young man in front of her and several martial marquises on the Western Front. At this time, she could only trust his judgment. Ning Qin was silent. He knew what this decree meant to Zhang Sun, but at this moment, he couldn't care too much. Imperial concubine, I'll go back first. It might be more appropriate for me to deal with Beimang and Barbarian King. After finishing the matter, Ning Qin didn't stay any longer and immediately took his leave. He glanced at the woman behind him and said, Ruoshi, push me back. Ruoshi responded softly, pushed the wheelchair, and walked out of the hall. She didn't understand everything the Marquis and Imperial concubine said, but she could hear that the enemy Grand Xia was about to face this time was different from before. Even the Marquis felt that it was difficult to deal with. In the study of the Marquis mansion, Ning Qin wrote 2 letters and quickly sent them out. The pace of the 3 dynasties must be synchronized. Now was not the time to consider the dynasty's gains and losses. If they couldn't defeat the Eternal Night cult, not only the 3 dynasties, but even the entire divine continent would fall into eternal damnation. Cough cough. The sound of coughing in the study was continuous. Blood flowed out from between the fingers. Even the strong phoenix body couldn't block Underworld King's palm. Even her origin was damaged. This was only a part of Underworld King's will that descended through Chu Li's body. It was hard to imagine how powerful the real Underworld King would be if he appeared. The black-haired figure that appeared when the central spirit region collapsed forcibly pulled the 2 worlds that were separated by endless space with a flip of his palm. Such divine power was truly unbelievable. The candle flame flickered. While Ji Ming was deep in thought, the chaos scroll trembled. Specks of blue light flew out and condensed into an illusory figure. Looking at the red-robed youth in front of him, he sighed softly and said, "How is it? Can you still hold on?" "I won't die for the time being." Ning Chen opened his eyes and laughed at himself. He continued, "Underworld King is about to descend. Fan Lingyue, your worries have come true. This monster has long surpassed the scope of humans. It's not something that can be stopped by human strength. Other than in the central spirit region, where Underworld King didn't dare to use his full strength because of the space's tolerance, none of them could take a single blow from this monster. Even Jian Bodhi and Li Luo, who had reached the peak of the second calamity, were the same. There should still be a chance. At least, he hasn't descended yet," Fan Lingyue said calmly. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded and said, "However, the troublesome thing is that we're too passive. We can only judge the conditions needed for Underworld King's descent based on the Eternal Night Cult's actions. Now that the source of the human race's special constitution and the source of the primordial divine beasts have been taken away one by one, we still don't know what's needed for the next step. In the art of war, know thyself and know thy enemy to win 100 battles." Their current situation was the most unfavorable one. They had to take one step at a time. It was hard to predict the enemy's advance. "Can't we enter the Eternal Night Cult to take the Light Scroll?" Fan Lingyue narrowed his eyes and asked. "It's very difficult." Ning Chen shook his head and said, "The power that Underworld King can descend now is far greater than before. He can appear at any time. Even if I go with the Eternal Night Cult Master, we'll just be throwing our lives away." Boom! Just as the two were talking, the divine continent suddenly shook violently. The huge aftermath caused the table and chairs in the study to shake violently. Ning Chen's expression changed. He waved his hand and pushed open the window of the study. In the distant horizon, 3 pillars of light shot into the sky. The terrifying aura was shocking. It was much heavier than a human Xiantian realm. It was not because someone had stepped into the Xiantian realm, but because of the 3 divine beast source aura. In the sky above the Eternal Night Cult, Zhong Qianqiu formed a seal with both hands. Streams of light flashed, and amidst the thunder and lightning, the source power of 9-headed snakelet, 8-headed snake, swan and eye, and the other divine beasts rose continuously. They attracted the endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In the next moment, a terrifying formation spread rapidly with the cult as the center. The extreme sky formation was activated, and the divine continent trembled. In the camp of the Eternal Night Army, tens of thousands of soldiers knelt down. At the same time, tens of millions of people from the dozens of dynasties in the West also knelt down and kowtowed to the divine miracle. Divine light scattered. With Northern Meng, Great Xia, and the barbarian dynasty as the boundary, half of the divine continent was shrouded under the divine miracle. In the study of the Marquis manor, Ning Chen's expression sank. There was no need to waste time guessing now. Such a huge force was undoubtedly preparing for Underworld King's descent. The next step was very clear. Chapter 373. Northern Meng Imperial Court. The shaking of the world woke Mingyu from her dream. She got up and opened the door. Looking to the west, her expression changed. What happened? At this time, an urgent report came from outside the palace. A little eunuch came in with a lantern and knelt down. Amethyst took the report and handed it to Mingyu. After reading the report, Mingyu was shocked. Yang Hong was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Upstream, a tower made of ice was beginning to take shape. In front of it, a man in white was channeling his true yuan to pour energy into the tower. The first tower of the 4 Directions Tower was about to be completed. At the same time, in the east of Barren City, Calamity Fire was channeling its energy to start the construction of the second tower. The earth rumbled and trembled. Within 10 miles, the earth shook and fire spewed out. In an instant, an earth fire tower was erected. The surrounding area was scorched. The divine continent was facing a great calamity. The king of hell was about to descend. With the West Earth's people causing trouble, the unfavorable situation worsened. All over the divine continent, every Xiantian felt the aura of the impending disaster. Their hearts throbbed intensely and uneasiness rose. Above the 9 heavens, the moonlight was as red as blood. At this moment, even the common people could see that something was wrong and began to panic. At dawn, the people who were preparing to go out to work suddenly found that the sky was still bright. The blood moon was still hanging high in the sky. The morning sun had not risen and the night was still covering the world. More and more fear spread among the people. No one knew what was happening. In the midst of the panic, another 2 hours later, the blood moon finally fell and the sun rose, dispersing the night. Ning Qin sat in his wheelchair and looked at the sky outside the window. He frowned. This is troublesome. Previously, although the time of day was slowly decreasing, it was not obvious. Now that 2 hours were missing, the people's hearts were in chaos. Without a doubt, the disorder of day and night was a sign of the King of Hell's arrival. The current situation could not be worse. Marquis, Miss Mu is awake. Ruoshi walked over and whispered. Push me over. Ning Chen withdrew his thoughts and ordered. In the room, Mu Qingxue woke up. Her beautiful face was slightly pale, but it seemed that she was fine. Ning Chen walked over. He had something to ask. In the southern wasteland, he and Li Luo fell into a coma after receiving the King of Hell's attack. They could not have escaped. Chu Li is dead, Mu Qingxue said. The truth wasn't complicated and could be explained in a few words. However, the truth was so cruel that it was shocking. The Eternal Night Sect Master also came to inquire after hearing that the former had woken up. His body trembled violently after hearing that something had happened to Chu Li. Ning Chen was silent. His thoughts were complicated. He didn't expect that Chu Li would be the one to save them in the end. The pain in the Eternal Night Hierarch's eyes could not be concealed. In the end, he still owed her. My condolences. Sensing the aura behind him, Ning Chen said slowly. The tribulation of the Deep King had yet to truly descend, but it had already caused so many tragedies that were impossible to reverse. It wasn't that he didn't understand others, but in the current situation, there was no time to be sad. The Eternal Night Hierarch was no ordinary person. He suppressed the sadness in his heart and asked, "When will your main body return?" "We still have to wait a little longer. The 2 life scrolls are difficult to cultivate, and it'll be difficult to return in a short period of time," Ning Chen explained. The Eternal Night Hierarch furrowed his brows slightly. This wasn't good news at all. Ever since the battle with the Nether King, the House of Marquis' combat power had been rapidly depleted. Now, it was getting more and more difficult for them to confront the divine sect that had the Nether King in charge. If possible, invite the abbot of Du Yi Temple and the state preceptor with the golden staff. At this time, the more power we have, the more hope we have, the Eternal Night Hierarch reminded. Ning Chen nodded. After the upheaval last night, the 2 of them must have felt the terrifying power of the Eternal Night cult. Joining hands to fight against the Nether King was their only choice. Otherwise, no one would be spared from this disaster. Hierarch, go to Mount Mijie. I will go to Northern Mang. We will act separately. After inviting the 2 of them, we will meet at the Marquis residence and discuss how to break the formation, Ning Chen suggested. Okay. The Eternal Night Hierarch nodded. This arrangement was the most suitable. The young man in front of him had a deep grudge with Mount Mijie. It was relatively better for him to personally invite them. After making the decision, the 2 no longer delayed and prepared to leave. Do you need me to go with you? Mu Qingxue asked. No need. You just focus on recuperating. There will be more unknown dangers in the future. The most important thing is to heal your injuries as soon as possible, Ning Qin said with a smile. What about you? If you don't recuperate, it is very likely that you will never recover, Mu Qingxue said seriously. It's okay. It's just a clone. If it's really impossible, I can just give it up, Ning Qin said with a smile. After saying that, Ning Qin glanced at Ruoxi behind him and said, let's go. Ruoxi nodded silently and pushed the former out of the room. A moment later, the ghost palanquin drove out of the Marquis residence and flew directly in the direction of northern Mang. Mu Qingxue walked to the window and looked at the departing ghost palanquin. His beautiful eyes flashed with a faint brilliance. Has he ever thought about me? As the ghost palanquin traveled north, the bell rang faintly as it streaked across the northern part of the Grand Xia. Inside the palanquin, coughing sounds could be heard from time to time. Ruoxi waited on the side, her white handkerchief dyed bright red. Marquis, Ruoxi could no longer hide the tears in her eyes and dripped down. She didn't understand what a clone was, but she could see that the Marquis was holding on very hard. Ruoxi, there is no need to be sad. As long as we can stop Hell King's descent, any price is worth it. After saying that, Ning Qin closed his eyes tiredly and tried to recover as much energy as possible. So far, he didn't have any way to deal with Hell King. He didn't know how strong a perfect three disasters ancient sage was, but Hell King's existence was undoubtedly far beyond this limit. Therefore, stopping his descent was the only choice. At the northern Mang Heavenly Lake, the ghost palanquin arrived and landed. Ruoxi pushed Ning Qin out of the palanquin and respectfully waited. Master has been summoned by His Majesty. I don't know when he will return. If there is nothing important, please go back. Outside the lake, Si Ming Sword's calm voice sounded. Ning Qin narrowed his eyes, feeling that something was wrong. What happened in northern Meng that made Mingyue call back the Golden Staff State Teacher? Thank you. Ning Qin expressed his thanks, then got on the ghost palanquin and headed north again. Something was wrong. Mingyue wouldn't call back the state teacher for no reason. Something must have happened. The ghost palanquin sped north, its speed increasing by 3 times. Northern Meng's capital, 100 miles away from the imperial palace, a frost pagoda stood on the banks of Ling Shui. A cold aura constantly spread out, freezing the world and spreading in all directions. On both sides of Ling Shui, human-shaped ice sculptures appeared one after another. The people who couldn't escape in time were completely sealed under the might of the Four Corners Tower. On top of the frost pagoda, Yi Shuihan stood in the air, constantly absorbing the origin energy of the divine continent. The King of Hell was about to arrive and the divine continent's fall was not far away. They had to finish the Four Corners Tower as soon as possible so they could return in time. In the imperial palace, Mingyue stood in front of the palace, looking at the faintly discernible ice pagoda in the distance. Her delicate face was full of anger. The state teacher with the golden staff state teacher appeared and went forward to receive the order. Destroy that pagoda. Mingyue's voice was filled with anger. Yes. The state teacher with the golden staff acknowledged the order. In the next moment, the golden staff glowed and the state teacher with the golden staff state teacher stepped into the air and rushed towards the ice pagoda. Reckless. However, before Yao Man and Jie Feng began construction, the locations of the other 2 towers had to be kept a secret. Ha! Hearing the location of the Earthfire Tower, Ning Qin coldly laughed. It seemed that not telling them where the most dangerous place in the Divine Prefecture was the right choice. At this moment, in the distant east, an incomparably beautiful sword chi broke through the air from Desolate City, slashing toward the Earthfire Tower 100 li away. With a rumble, the newly constructed Divine Tower instantly collapsed. Chapter 374. When Mu Bai attacked, his unparalleled sword intent shook the 9 heavens. Even from thousands of miles away, they could feel that kind of unreasonable aura. What the five of them didn't know was that in the Divine Continent, the place they couldn't defend the most was Desolate City. The Earthfire Flame Tower collapsed, and a terrifying backlash struck its master. Before the Tribulation Flame could react, it vomited a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky. Ning Chen looked in the direction of Desolate City. Mu Bai's sword was even stronger than before. At the same time, in the southern border of the Grand Xia, a purple-robed youth was looking at Desolate City. What a powerful sword! Now, it seemed he had a reason to attack this unfamiliar expert from the Divine Continent. His figure flickered, and a purple-white light shot out, heading north. In front of the Frost Tower, Ishuihan's expression darkened. If the Earthfire Flame Tower was destroyed, there was still a chance to rebuild it. But if something happened to the Tribulation Flame, it would be troublesome. Who is that person? Asked Ishuihan. Mu Bai, the #1 swordsman in the Divine Continent, said Ning Chen. How is he compared to the one in your manor? Ishuihan's eyes were cold. Ha! Ning Chen smiled. The two of them fought once, and Mu Bai won. Ishuihan narrowed his eyes and waved his hand to disperse the power in the tower. Amidst the specks of frost, the Frost Tower dispersed and the frozen world around it melted. Jiming Marquis, since you've come out, I'll give you face. I hope we can still be friends and not enemies, said Ishuihan. Naturally. This Marquis will remember Brother Yi's favor today. Ning Chen smiled. That's good. I still have things to do, so let's meet again. Ishuihan cupped his hands and bowed. With a move of his feet, he rushed towards the southeast direction. Seeing him disappear, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor frowned. He turned to the person in front of him and said, "You let him go so easily. That's not your style." Before he even finished speaking, a violent coughing sound rang out. Specks of red seeped out of his fingers and fell from the sky. The red-robed figure staggered and almost fell. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor's expression changed. He took a step forward and condensed Yuan Qi into the former's body. How did you suffer such heavy injuries? Sensing the chaotic aura in Ning Chen's body, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor asked in shock. It's a long story. I've come with a request, and I hope Senior can agree to it. Ning Chen endured the pain in his body. Against the Eternal Night Cult. You already have so many experts in your residence, so you shouldn't lack me. The Golden Staff Imperial Master was puzzled. According to what he knew, the Jiming Marquis residence had no less than 3 disaster-level experts, and their strengths were all above his. Coupled with the Great Xia's Marquis Kai-Xian, such a powerful battle force was enough to be on par with the Eternal Night Cult. The present is different from the past. Seniors Jian Bodhi and Li Luo are in closed-door cultivation to recuperate, and the Nether King is about to arrive. We can't wait any longer. I hope that you can lend us a hand. Ning Chen stabilized himself, bowed deeply, and pleaded once more. A strange light flashed through the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor's eyes. This was the first time he had seen the person in front of him like this, and he was somewhat unaccustomed to it. The reason he was able to touch the edge of the second disaster was thanks to the phoenix blood that the youth in front of him had given him when he returned from the Four Extremities realm. Logically speaking, he shouldn't refuse this request, but he had personally witnessed the Nether King's strength. A direct confrontation wasn't something fun. Ning Chen saw through the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor's worries and said, "Senior Golden Staff, although the Nether King can borrow the power of others to descend, there are clearly great limitations. If you encounter such a situation again, Senior doesn't need to worry too much and can immediately withdraw. Junior doesn't dare to guarantee anything else, but as long as this body can still move, I will definitely be the first person to block the Nether King's path." The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor's expression froze, and hesitation flashed through his eyes. In the end, he sighed deeply and said, "Let's go." "Many thanks, Senior." Ning Chen bowed once more, respectfully thanking him. The two of them walked into the ghost palanquin, and in the next moment, a ray of light flashed and they disappeared. In the manner of Jiming Marquis, the Eternal Night Hierarch and the abbot of the Du-Yi Temple had returned one step ahead of time. In the Divine Continent, the strongest people in the world had gathered to discuss the matter of breaking the array. In the study, the four people sat opposite each other and discussed the current situation in detail. Ruoshi served tea and retreated, not disturbing the four people's discussion. The candlelight flickered, and above the tea, steam rose, making it slightly hazy. Perhaps it was because of the blood moon in the sky, but the weather in Grand Xia was getting colder and colder. It wasn't winter yet, but the furnaces in the homes of the people were already lit early. In the backyard of the Marquis Manor, the crackling sound of charcoal could be heard from time to time. Only the study was still cold. Ruoshi didn't light the fire because Ning Chen didn't allow it. Ruoshi didn't know why, but she could only follow the order. In the study, the Eternal Night Hierarch had been talking for a long time. He looked at the three people in front of him and said seriously, "The possibility of breaking the formation by force is not high. According to the pressure of the three light pillars last night, the strength of this formation has surpassed that of all of us here. Do you know the identity of the person who set up the array?" The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor thought for a moment and asked. "Zong Qinqiu." Ning Chen calmly said. Just now, the information sent by Victorious Returns Camp had arrived. The person who set up the array last night was the long-lost Second Temple Master of Eternal Night. Ba, I think the Hierarch should know more about this person, the Abbot of Du-Yi Temple said. The Eternal Night Hierarch narrowed his eyes and replied, "The truth is the opposite. The Eternal Night Hierarch has different missions and is strictly prohibited from interfering in other people's affairs. Zong Qianqiu is the most trusted person of the Eternal Night Hierarch and holds the most secrets of the Hierarch. Relatively speaking, he is also the one who hides the deepest. Now that he is in the array, I don't know what he can do. Let's not talk about Zong Qianqiu for now, there is one more person we have to guard against." Ning Chen coughed a few times and interrupted. "You mean Bianjiang?" The Eternal Night Hierarch shifted his gaze and said in a deep voice. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded and said, "The last time this person appeared in the southern border, although his strength was obviously reduced, Mu Qingxue had destroyed his sea of qi. It is almost impossible for him to recover in such a short time. The only explanation is that Bianjiang can temporarily borrow power from the Netherworld King." The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor and the Abbot of Du-Yi Temple were silent. This was indeed a big hidden danger. They were going to break the array this time. If they had to divide their energy to deal with two unknown opponents, the chances of success would be greatly reduced. No matter what the situation is, we will only know after we go in. If we encounter something unpredictable, we will act according to the circumstances, the Eternal Night Hierarch said. Yes, this is the only way now. Boy, your injuries are too serious. You don't have to go this time, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor said lightly. Ba, Golden Staff, this is impossible. The Abbot of Du-Yi Temple shook his head and denied. Jiming Marquis had to go. Otherwise, the chances of success would be even lower. The Abbot is right. The Eternal Night Hierarch sighed and said, "This mission is different from the past. Ning Chen must go. No matter how hard it is, he must continue. The two of you, one is the head of the Buddhist kingdom, the other is the Eternal Night Hierarch. Do you have so little confidence in yourselves?" The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor sneered coldly. "It is not a matter of confidence." The Abbot of Du-Yi Temple looked serious and said, "Although there are no mediocre people who can cultivate to our level, none of us can deny that the person who is most likely to see the way to break the array is still Jiming Marquis. There were many wise people in the Divine Continent, but there were two people who surpassed everyone. One was Fan Lingyue of Northern Meng, and the other was Jiming Marquis of Great Xia. Although their martial strength was extraordinary, there was no doubt that their wisdom was the most feared thing in the world. It was not that the world was stupid, but that their knowledge was too much beyond ordinary people. The battle between Great Xia and Northern Meng still made people tremble with fear. Fan Lingyue had beaten Great Xia into a sorry state, but in the end, Great Xia was able to survive because Jiming Marquis was the most important person. The defeat of the four extreme Holy Lands and the fall of the Eternal Night Hierarch were all related to Jiming Marquis. From the rise and fall of Northern Meng and Great Xia these years, it could be seen that a person's wisdom could play an astonishing role. They were not mediocre people, but Jiming Marquis was the most likely person to find the way to break the array. "Kid, I can't help you. Don't die in there." The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor also knew that arguing was useless. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Golden Staff. I can still hold on for now." Ning Chen smiled tiredly and thanked him. "Ask that Miss Meng to come with us. She can take care of you," the Eternal Night Hierarch suggested. Ning Chen thought about it and nodded. Mu Qingxue was recuperating in his residence, so the safety of the Marquis residence should not be a problem. There is no time to lose. Let's leave immediately. Who knows what will happen if we are late? The Eternal Night Hierarch stood up and said seriously. Yes. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor and Du Yi Temple's abbot nodded and also stood up to leave. "Ruoshi." Ning Chen called out. "Marquis." Ruoshi pushed the door open and softly said. "Push me to see Miss Meng." Ning Chen calmly said. Ruoshi stepped forward, pushed the wheelchair, and walked out of the study. In front of Meng Xuanji's room, Ruoshi pushed Ning Chen in and knocked on the door before entering. The room was very warm. Fatigue suddenly hit him like a tide, making it even harder for him to stay awake. "Miss Meng." Ning Chen suppressed the dizziness in his head and quickly explained the situation. "Your body is like this and you still want to go?" Meng Xuanji frowned and said in a deep voice. "What are those three old guys thinking?" In the current situation, the possibility of breaking the array by force is not big. The key is to find a way to break it as soon as possible. One more person means one more hope. Ning Chen seriously said. Meng Xuanji sighed heavily in her heart, not knowing what to say. She waved her hand and took the gilded feather from the room and walked out. Ruoshi silently turned the wheelchair and followed. In the courtyard, the Eternal Night Hierarch and the other two were already waiting. Seeing Meng Xuanji and Ning Chen come out, they no longer delayed and quickly set off. Under the charming moonlight, a stream of light flew out of the Marquis residence. Ruoshi stood in place, tears falling silently from her eyes. She didn't understand why the Marquis had to carry these burdens. The door creaked and a beautiful figure in white walked out. She silently watched the stream of light disappearing into the distance. Chapter 375. On the west side of the Grand Xia, Marquis Triumphant, the Golden Staff State Preceptor, the Abbot of Du Yi Temple, and the Eternal Night Hierarch appeared in front of the extreme sky array. At the side, the wheelchair creaked as Meng Xuanji pushed Ning Chen over. She stopped in front of the formation and observed the situation. "When do we go in?" Marquis Triumphant asked. "Let's wait until dawn," Ning Chen said calmly as he looked at the blood moon in the west. The power of the Nether King could only be felt when the moon rose. Even Qianqiu had chosen to set up the array at night. There couldn't be so many coincidences in the world. There must be a reason that they didn't know. The Eternal Night Hierarch and the others nodded. There was less than 2 hours until dawn, so there was no need to rush. The night was very long. Since the extreme sky array was opened, day and night had become disordered. The 6 of them waited for 2 hours before the sun rose from the east. "Let's go." Light flashed as figures rushed into the array. The extreme sky array that covered half of the Divine Prefecture was facing its most powerful challenge. The path was rugged and difficult. Everyone felt their bodies being suppressed as soon as they entered, and it was getting worse. Be careful. The Eternal Night Hierarch's expression became serious. He circulated his body to resist the power of the array. The abbot of Du E Temple, the Golden Staff State Preceptor, and Marquis Triumphant also gathered their energy, ready to deal with any danger that might appear at any time. Meng Xuanji pushed Ning Chen in a wheelchair and walked to the side. She was cautious with every step, and her divine sense was highly concentrated. The sky was filled with three-colored divine light. With the origin of the divine beasts as a guide, it gathered the spiritual energy and faith of the world to form the world's most terrifying extreme sky array. Even though the people present were the top experts of the divine prefecture, they didn't dare to be careless. Ning Chen looked at the flickering divine light around him and narrowed his eyes. He didn't say anything as he calmly observed. This time, he wouldn't participate in the battle. However, he had to focus on finding a way to break the array. Miss Meng, remind me every 100 steps, said Ning Chen. Okay. Meng Xuanji nodded. As they walked, beams of light fell from the sky one after another. The power of faith from half of the divine land in the west continued to gather. It was far more powerful than the power of faith in the Buddhist land. It pressed down on everyone, making it difficult for them to move. Ning Chen calmed himself down and carefully calculated the steps and the changes in the power of faith. No formation could be perfect. The key was whether they could find the weakness of the formation. Not a single person. After walking for a long time, the Golden Staff Imperial Advisor frowned slightly. They were already close to the center of the formation, but there was still silence. It was indeed abnormal. However, before he could finish speaking, the void swirled and 4 flame deity generals appeared out of thin air. Their giant fists smashed down with earth-shattering might. The Eternal Night Hierarch, Du E Temple's abbot, Golden Staff State Preceptor, and Marquis Victorious Return's expressions turned serious. They condensed vast origin energy in their palms and met the fists of the 4 divine generals at the same time. With a loud bang, shockwaves scattered in all directions. Rubble flew everywhere and shattered in the air. Meng Xuanji stepped forward and waved her hand to disperse the shockwaves of the battle, not allowing any danger to approach. She knew very well that Ning Chen's body could not withstand any more waves. There could not be any mistakes. The 4 top cultivators of the world fought against the 4 flame deity generals. Although their cultivation techniques were suppressed by the formation, they still had the absolute advantage. Before the blades were drawn, the flame deity generals had already dispersed. The flame deity generals disappeared. The surrounding atmosphere suddenly changed. A cold wind rustled, and in a faint hum, sonorous footsteps sounded from afar. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of Yin soldiers appeared. They walked in rows and rows. Seeing these Yin soldiers, the abbot of the Du E Temple felt disgusted. He stepped forward and flipped a seal. Buddhist holy light rose and purified the Yin soldiers in front of him. The Buddhist holy light appeared and rumbled. The thousands of Yin soldiers turned into ashes and disappeared. Behind them, Ning Chen looked at the Yin soldiers who were turning into ashes. His eyes flickered. It was fake. Retreat 100 steps, said Ning Chen. Everyone did not understand, but they still listened to him and retreated 100 steps. After 100 steps, the distance between them and the Yin soldiers did not change. They continued to walk forward. The number of Yin soldiers was like a flood. It was shocking. We are trapped in the illusion. After retreating 100 steps, the pressure of the power of faith did not change. The restrictions on their cultivation techniques were the same as before. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed as he reminded them. Miss Meng, said the Eternal Night Hierarch as he shifted his gaze. Yes. Meng Xuanji walked out and waved her hand. The golden feather lance flew out. The 5 of them activated it together. Golden light shone, and a sharp aura overflowed. cracks appeared in the space. In the next moment, the golden light slashed down, and the catoptric deflection shattered. The Een soldiers dissipated, and the surroundings returned to normal. In the distance, the Eternal Night Hierarch could be vaguely seen. Apparently, they were not far from the center of the formation. Cough, cough. Ning Chen suppressed his cough. The injuries in his body worsened again. Drops of blood seeped through his fingers and dyed his clothes red. Meng Xuanji was shocked. She condensed her vital energy and was about to suppress his injuries. Not now. Ning Chen reached out and stopped her. He endured the pain in his chest and said. Now, he could not have any vital energy in his body. With the interference, he could not clearly feel the strength of the formation suppression on his cultivation techniques. Everyone, welcome to the extreme sky formation. At this moment, light gathered in the void, and a figure in purple appeared. The young and handsome face was so familiar. It was the long-lost second hierarch of Eternal Night Hierarch, Zong Qianqiu. Who's up? The golden staff imperial preceptor looked at the figure floating in the sky and said coldly. Ba, this poor monk will do it. The abbot of Du Yi Temple chanted. He stomped his feet, and his Buddha body rose. The revered one of the world's teachings suppressed the evil. Golden light gathered, and the image of the revered one of the world's Tathagata appeared. The revered one of the world's mantras was spoken and suppressed the second hierarch of Eternal Night Hierarch. Buddha in the mortal world, you can only be a Buddha in the mortal world. Zong Qianqiu sneered. He moved lightly and instantly appeared in front of the Buddha body. He flipped his palm and slapped down. With a loud bang, the Buddha body collapsed. The indestructible Vajra body of Buddhism was broken. Blood spurted out and scattered in the 9 heavens. Below, the 5 people were shocked. Marquis' triumphant return moved, and the glorious Era saber appeared. The magnificent Era saber slashed down, and then the Buddha in the mortal world was retreated. Zong Qianqiu waved his hand to disperse the saber light. His eyes were cold as he looked at the people below. How can he be so capable? The golden staff imperial preceptor said in a deep voice. The second hierarch of Eternal Night Hierarch was not known for his martial strength. He was proficient in magic arts. Now that he had such terrifying martial strength, it was really shocking. Ning Chen stood up, and with a wave of his hand, the King of Hell's divine sword appeared in his hand. He moved, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the Buddha in the mortal world. With a clang, a drop of blood dripped down from the Buddha's right shoulder. Everyone was shocked at first, but when they came back to their senses, their expressions changed. How could this be? With the Marquis Jiming's heavily injured body, how could he break the indestructible Vajra body of the abbot of Du Yi Temple? Ning Chen put away his sword and returned to his wheelchair. He coughed violently a few times. Obviously, the attack just now had put a lot of burden on his body. It's not that Zong Qianqiu has become stronger, but that everyone has become weaker. Our bodies have been suppressed, and that's why we have this illusion. Now that the situation is unclear, other than the hierarch and Marquis triumphant return, try not to fight head-on. Ning Chen endured his injuries and warned everyone based on his own judgment. Marquis' triumphant return had the glorious battle armor protecting him, so his attacks were limited. However, his defense wouldn't be weakened too much. Furthermore, according to his estimate, even if the Eternal Night Hierarch's cultivation base was suppressed, he could still maintain the strength of a 3 disaster-level expert. Why aren't you affected? Asked the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor. It's not that I'm not affected. It's just that my body is special. It has a divine beast origin similar to this formation, so the suppression is a bit smaller, said Ning Chen tiredly. The Marquis Jiming, not being able to get rid of you back then was indeed our biggest mistake. However, today we can make up for that regret. Before he even finished speaking, Bai Jiang walked out, his black aura surging. It was unknown how many times stronger he was than the last time he had appeared. Sensing the familiar aura from Bai Jiang, the Eternal Night Hierarch's expression turned cold. His eyes were filled with killing intent. You stole Chu Li's body. So what? Even in death, she'll be with me, said Bai Jiang coldly. The Eternal Night Hierarch could no longer tolerate this. His feet moved, and his smoke cloud divine halberd appeared. You're too weak right now. With a mocking laugh, Bai Jiang clenched his fist and used bloodshed heavenly tears. Dazzling sword light shot out. With a bang, the sword and halberd clashed. Killing light flew everywhere. The two people clashing did not show the slightest bit of mercy. Every move they made was meant to kill the other. Bai Jiang, who had used Chu Li's body to recover from his injuries, had reached his peak. On the other hand, the Eternal Night Hierarch was suppressed by the formation. Even with his halberd, it was difficult for him to gain the upper hand. Hua Zhuang, Remnant Wind, it's time for you to come out, said Zhong Qianqiu. Yes, Palace Master. Two figures appeared. Halberd and sword light shot toward the red-robed youth in the wheelchair. Meng Xuanji's expression turned cold. She waved her golden feather saber, condensing vast yuan in her palms. On the other side, Marquis Triumphant Return and the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor were working together to fight Zhong Qianqiu. A sea of lightning surged. A battle of martial power and magical arts had just begun. At the same time, in Desolate City to the east of the Grand Xia, two peak experts were also facing each other. The stifling atmosphere made it hard for people to breathe. Swordsman, you destroyed my pagoda. Do you think I should take revenge? Asked Luo Xingqian. Of course, said Mu Bai calmly. Ha, that's good. Let my stars Car Bao experience your martial arts. With a flip of his hand, the stars Car Bao appeared. Starlight filled the sky, and an ancient and heavy bow appeared. The bow's body was carved with the stars of the 9 heavens. It possessed an extraordinary might. When the stars Car Bao appeared in his hand, it began to shine brilliantly. The moment the bow was drawn, the winds and clouds of the 9 heavens changed. An arrow shot out. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived. After the first arrow, another arrow shot out, and then a third arrow. Chasing star and chasing moon. 3 arrows shot towards Swordsman's heart. The Zhao family's genius might only be at the 2nd Calamity realm, but his battle prowess was unquestionably on par with the Zhao family's 3rd Calamity experts. Today, he had drawn his bow and fought a legend. Within the sword pool, the primal chaos sword essence floated up and down. In front of the sword pool, Mu Bai raised his hand. Sword intent gathered around him. Chapter 376. The soundless sword chi condensed into the sharpness of heaven and earth. It tore through the air with an unstoppable momentum, instantly breaking through the 2 arrows and colliding with the last moon-chasing arrow. The sword chi was sharp and dazzling, but the arrow's radiance also became stronger and stronger. The most extreme collision caused the air to surge, constantly swirling around the sword pool. The floating sword was still indifferent. With a bang, the sword chi and the arrow's radiance shattered at the same time, bringing about boundless turbulence that scattered in all directions. Extraordinary swordsman, are you still not going to use your sword? Falling Star's body moved, turning into thousands of afterimages. The arrow's radiance flickered, one after another appearing in the sky and falling towards Mu Bai. Sword style, one sword of 10,000 calamities. The heaven-proving sword style roared and surged, endlessly rising. The sword's radiance spiraled, blocking the arrow's radiance. Right at this moment, an arrow with a completely different aura broke through the sword's radiance and brushed past the swordsman's left arm. With a ripping sound, his white clothes were torn apart, and traces of blood flowed out. Desolate City's undefeatable sword actually saw red for the first time. Sword style, one sword of limitless distance. The swordsman was calm, and his expression did not change. The limitless distance sword appeared, the world's fastest sword. Wherever the will was, the sword would follow. It broke through the limits of space, and a white shadow streaked across the sky. In the blink of an eye, it had cut through thousands of afterimages. Within the shattered afterimages, Falling Star retreated 30 meters. Looking at the white-robed swordsman in front of him, the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. What a fast sword! Only an opponent like this was worthy of him using his full strength. Opening the arrow box, a green arrow flew out. Star Mark drew his bow, and in the blink of an eye, the wind-riding arrow had already arrived in front of Mu Bai. Mu Bai used his fingers to catch the arrow, and the moment he broke the arrow, another arrow appeared within the arrow. The golden arrow's radiance broke through the limits and pierced through his body. Ah! Mu Bai retreated half a step. Fresh blood dripped from his shoulder, dyeing his white clothes red. If you don't use your sword, you can't complain about your death. 3 arrows split the sky, and streams of light appeared in an instant. Falling Star turned his palm and drew his bow. The 3 arrows interweaved with dazzling light, and the pressure of the true third calamity shook the world. It surpassed the attack of the Eternal Night Hierarch, proving Desolate City's legend. Mu Bai waved his hand, and the sword pools water droplets. Water droplets flew out and condensed into 3 swords, directly meeting with the 3 arrows.
With a bang, the water splashed everywhere. The arrow was unstoppable and once again closed in on him. Formless sword. Mu Bai pressed his fingers together to catch the sword. Tens of thousands of sword streams converged, and the 3 arrows' radiance scattered, vanishing into nothingness. However, right at this moment, a scarlet arrow appeared. The penetrating crimson divine arrow that had injured several big shots of the Zhao family in the past had reappeared in the divine continent today. The long tail of the arrow cut through the void like a demonic star, pressing towards them. The young master of West Buddha had suppressed the legend of the divine sword. The unbelievable battle had reached its peak under the terrifying red arrow. Even though Mu Bai was injured one after another, his expression was still as calm as before. Facing this powerful arrow, he had no thoughts, no desires, and no desires. The world of swords spread out. Heaven and earth became solemn. Mountain rocks, ruined walls, pond water, and 10,000 things transformed into swords, all of them welcomed the arrow. With a ping sound, the 2 weapons collided. The crimson-piercing divine arrow pierced through the air, directly entering the swordsman's chest. Mu Bai retreated, his mouth overflowing with blood. The crimson-piercing divine arrow flew out, returning to the arrow box. After 1 arrow, the invincible sword of Barren City was defeated. The powerful cultivators of the divine prefecture are nothing more than this. Luo Xingchen waved his hand and put away his bow. He turned around and left. His purple and white clothes fluttered in the wind. After 2 steps, he disappeared. Master. Jian Er walked out. Looking at the figure in front of the sword pool, his eyes were filled with worry. His master had actually been defeated. This was something he had never expected. The battle just now was too abnormal. His master's strength should not be limited to this. Mu Bai was silent. Looking at the swords in the sword pool, his heart was complicated. Was this the taste of a defeated sword? Master, why don't you use your sword? Jian Er did not understand. It's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't. Mu Bai sighed softly. He waved his hand to retrieve his sword. However, the sword did not move. It floated up and down in the sword pool as if it did not feel anything. Jian Er's pupils shrank. The sword did not recognize its master. How could it be like this? Mu Bai looked at the academy in the west. A trace of confusion flashed through his calm eyes. For the first time, his sword heart was no longer clear. In Tiansang Academy, the teacher tiredly tidied up the ancient books on the bookshelves. One by one, he swept away the dust on them. The Tao of the sword was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall back. Mu Bai's sword had already reached the peak. No one could guide him. No one knew how to walk the rest of his path. Every moth had to go through the process of spinning a cocoon to become a butterfly. He and Dao Kuei had also gone through this difficult period. Now, it was up to Mu Bai to see if he could walk out of it and regain the clarity of his sword heart. At the same time, in the west of the Grand Xia, Ning Chen and the others who had come to break the formation had also encountered quite a bit of trouble. Marquis Triumphant Return and the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor were working together to fight against Zong Qinqiu. A sea of lightning surged, and the Fiend God stood tall. This was the most extreme confrontation between martial arts and magical arts. On the other side, the Eternal Night Sect Master was fighting against the head of the Martial Crown Sect. Due to his past enmity, he was even more ruthless. In the final battle, Meng Xuanji was fighting against two opponents. She blocked all the dangers before knowing destiny. Her golden feather danced, blocking the combined might of Hua Zhuang and Remnant Wind. Outside of the battle, the abbot of Du Yi Temple closed his eyes to heal his injuries. He was seizing the time to recover his battle strength. The outcome of this battle was unpredictable. He had to suppress the injuries on his body as soon as possible. The five of them were restrained and couldn't escape. On the wheelchair, Ning Chen kept coughing lightly. He resisted the urge to faint and forced himself to stay awake. Just a little more. He couldn't let all his efforts go to waste now. The wheelchair creaked as it moved away from the battle. According to the distance and the changes in his body, he calculated the strength of every part of the formation. Knowing destiny's mind worked faster than ever before. He calculated the distribution of the power of faith in the formation bit by bit. The wheel imprints on the wheelchair crisscrossed in the formation like a chessboard. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't in the shape of a square. The wheel imprints that extended in one direction weren't parallel. After extending, they actually faintly converged in one place. In the sky, Zong Qianqiu's gaze swept across the ground. His expression changed slightly. He turned his palm and condensed yuan energy, pushing the two away. His figure flashed and rushed towards the figure on the wheelchair. Bai Jiang, don't fight. Kill Marquis Jiming first. The urgent voice showed Zong Qianqiu's uneasiness. How could there be such a smart person in the world? Zong Qianqiu didn't know how Marquis Jiming figured it out. However, the place where the wheelchair imprints extended to was the weakest part of the ultimate sky formation. Hearing this, Bai Jiang swung his sword and broke away from the battle. He also rushed towards Marquis Jiming in the distance. On the wheelchair, Ning Chen was at the critical moment of his calculation. He was highly focused and didn't realize the danger. When he came back to his senses, the two were already in front of him.
Marquis Jiming, give me your life. The vast power of the palm struck down with killing intent. At this moment, Zong Qianqiu's fear of the young man on the wheelchair reached an unprecedented level. His palm carried infinite killing intent and was about to end Jiming's life. At the critical moment, a beautiful figure stood in front of him. With a bang, the palm imprinted on the woman's back. Jiming's vision was dyed red. Drops of warm blood dripped down from Jiming's face. The most heart-wrenching scene made the man on the wheelchair completely stunned. After a short delay, Marquis Triumphant Return and the State Master with the Golden Staff finally arrived. The glorious era military saber cut the line of life and death and forced Zong Qianqiu to retreat. Bai Jiang also arrived. The bloody sky tears led a fierce killing light to Jiming again. The State Master with the Golden Staff blocked the attack with his staff. With a bang, he retreated a dozen steps and vomited vermilion blood. At the same time, the Yongye hierarch rushed to block Bai Zhang's path and separated the battle again. The change happened in an instant, so fast that no one had time to react. The woman fell powerlessly to the ground like a fallen leaf, without a sound. Miss Meng. Ning Chen was absent-minded. His numb heart didn't even feel pain. He stared blankly at the woman in his arms. Blood kept dripping down from his face. Why? Why? Every question pierced knowing Destiny's heart. The more he owed, the more his heart was torn apart. The remaining wind and the tip of Hua Zhuang's halberd attacked. The figure on the wheelchair sat up. Violent killing intent rippled out from his body. The bloody mist dyed the surrounding Tenjiang red. The phoenix origin burned and blood qi surged. Fiery wolves surged one after another. The Yama sword was in his hand. The killing intent shook the world. You all deserve to die. Jiming lost his mind. His eyes were red. His figure disappeared in an instant. A dazzling bloody light streaked across the sky and blocked the sword. Before the sword fell and his soul returned, his head flew up. Blood spurted everywhere. Jiming, who burned his origin, bloomed with the brightest light of life. It was so fast that it was shocking and painful. Bai Jiang was shocked. He waved his sword to block the way. However, the figure flashed past in an instant. No one could stop it. The red figure rushing toward Zhong Qianqiu attracted a killing intent. It was so fast that no one could stop it. Hall Master. Hua Zhuang was shocked. He hurried back to help, but it was too late. The Yama sword's bloody light was dazzling. The heavy phoenix origin gathered and the sword broke through the sea of lightning and fire. Zhong Qianqiu's mind was shaken. He turned his palm to block the sword. The sword's momentum changed in an instant. The death light pierced through his shoulder, bringing with it a large amount of blood. Chapter 377. My king, haha, blood splashed and a piercing laughter echoed in the formation. In the next moment, Zhong Qianqiu's body collapsed rapidly. The sharp sword qi exploded and blood and bones filled the sky, falling like rain and dyeing the ground red. Zhong Qianqiu's death made Bai Zhang's expression change greatly. Black qi surged around his body and the green blood qi shone fiercely. He stepped out of the battle and rushed toward knowing destiny. Seeing this, Marquis triumphant return waved his saber and slashed out. The ground collapsed and separated, cutting off the path ahead. The saber and the sword clashed. Marquis triumphant return took several blows and the corner of his mouth turned red. The location of the formation is 17 miles north of here, across the intersection of the 9 infants and Swanee light pillars. Within the thick blood fog, Ning Chen, who was covered in a dazzling blood light, spoke. His voice penetrated the blood fog and spread to everyone present. As soon as he finished speaking, the red light disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was shockingly fast and appeared in front of Bai Jiang. You guys go and break the formation. The tip of the sword burned to the extreme. The final brilliance was dazzling. Knowing destiny moved to kill, ruthless, heartless, and emotionless. The extremely fast speed and the cold killing light made the head of the martial crown not dare to be careless. He waved his green blood heaven's tears and faced Yama's divine weapon head-on. The two swords clashed. Yama's divine sword turned instantly, using speed to overcome strength. The red clothes fluttered and the afterimages of the red light were too much for the eyes to take in. Leave this woman to me. You guys go. The abbot of Du Yi Temple supported his injured body and opened the Buddha world to block Hua Zhuang. Take care. The hierarch of eternal night sighed. He didn't want to waste the time that knowing destiny had bought by burning his life. He rushed toward the place that the latter mentioned. The abbot of Du Temple and Marquis' triumphant return also suppressed the heaviness in their hearts and moved quickly to follow. In order to stop Yama's descent, so many people had been sacrificed. At the last moment, they couldn't hesitate anymore. Bai Zhang's expression changed and wanted to stop them. However, Yama's divine sword was aiming for death. Every move was like a path to hell. Marquis, you're courting death. Bai Jiang was infuriated, the surrounding black aura surged, the sword tip emitting a dazzling jade light, the power of 10,000 caddies shook the heavens and the earth. The ground rumbled and collapsed, and large chunks of earth and stone rose up. The head of the martial crown used its ultimate move. Everything collapsed, and heaven and earth sank. The terrifying might contained everything within a radius of 3 kilometers. Ning Chen couldn't dodge the powerful shockwave that covered a large area. The shockwave hit his body. Instantly, his mouth turned red, and he was injured for the first time. If you want my life, then trade it with yours. The blood flow did not stop, and the sword's momentum did not stop either. The sword that returned was filled with boundless bloody light. In the blink of an eye, the sword saw red, and the heaven and earth were illuminated. The life-knowing cultivator burned his phoenix source to the limit, and his cultivation base rose at an even faster speed. At this point, not even his afterimages could be seen. All that was left were streaks of red light, and in the blink of an eye, a bloody mist filled the sky. The battle between strength and speed reached its peak in the ultimate heaven formation. Riding the wind, it was hard to distinguish between man and sword. The sword moved, the man moved, and the man followed the sword. In the battle at the top, the spiritual yuan of the warriors resonated in the sky. Thousands of invisible chains swayed, which was the recognition of the great Tao to the swordsman. At this moment, everyone in the barren city, the manor of the Marquis of Jiming, and the college seemed to have heard the sound of the swaying chains. Oh! There's an even stronger sword. Luo Xingchen, who had just left the barren city, moved quickly to the west. At the end of his life, the beginning of Jiming's sword of Jiming was flawless, and all the strong cultivators in the world felt this completely different sword heart. Is this his sword? In front of the sword pool, Mu Bai looked to the west and sighed softly. An unwavering sword heart. This brat's persistence impressed him once again. In the manner of the Marquis of Jiming, Mu Qingxue looked to the west. Tears fell from her beautiful eyes unconsciously, and an inexplicable pain lingered in her heart. In the Weiyang Palace, Qing Ning, who was accompanying Zhang Sun to read, suddenly trembled. She bowed to Zhang Sun without showing her emotions, and quietly left. Outside the palace, Qing Ning finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She covered her red lips, and tears dripped down. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed. In the Taoyu's stomach, Sui felt the danger of her clone. Her aura became chaotic, and waves of backlash spread from her qi to her main body. Ah! The chaotic true essence brought about a waterfall of blood mist. The clone was connected to the main body, and at this moment, it was also on the verge of death. Ningchen. Jiang Wangji's expression shook. His hands moved, and the guqin played. The two ancient swords, one yin and one yang, spun in reverse, opening the Tao Gate's secret formation. Go against the yin and yang of heaven and earth, turn the 100 qi of the universe into one, return to the origin, and turn life and death into heaven. The Tao Gate's secret formation opened, and yin and yang turned into yin and yang. The two yin and yang gave birth to yin and yang. The spinning ancient swords reversed yin and yang, protecting the two soul flames of Jiming. In the extreme sky grand formation, Hongyi, who was burning her origin energy, reached an unprecedented level of clarity in her sword at the last moment of her life. The sharpness of each sword was stronger than the previous one, making the head of the martial crown feel extreme pressure. God destroys heaven and earth. Bai Jiang channeled the power of the Nether King, and endless black energy surged around his body. The extreme might shook the world, and a violent pressure soared into the sky, sweeping away the clouds and shocking the divine prefecture. As the divine might descended upon him, his red robes turned, and his illusory figure instantly moved. It was impossible to see with the naked eye, and he avoided the streams of air that approached him. Just as Jiming was burning his life to buy time, the Eternal Knight Hierarch, Marquis triumphant return, and the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor arrived at the weak point of the formation that Ningqian had mentioned. In the twisting void, a huge pitch-black vortex floated up and down. No one knew where it led, but a terrifying pressure was faintly discernible. It was enough to make one's heart tremble. That's it. The Eternal Knight Hierarch looked at the spatial vortex in front of him and said solemnly. Time is of the essence. Destroy it. Marquis Triumphant Return held his saber and gathered his true essence. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor nodded. His golden staff spun rapidly, and true essence gathered around his body. The golden ring rang, and his lifetime of cultivation was used in this most important move. The three worked together, and their true essence temporarily suppressed the power of the formation. 3 streams of light gathered in one place and slashed at the black vortex in the void. A shocking explosion shook the formation, and the vortex cracked open. Just as it was about to succeed, the power of faith of half of the divine land gathered in the formation and quickly stabilized the center of the formation. Black feathers fluttered, and the power of faith gathered into an illusory figure. Its face couldn't be seen clearly, but an extremely terrifying aura circulated, suppressing heaven and earth. Seeing the figure formed by the power of faith, the three's expressions immediately sank. This was troublesome. The demonic god appeared, and its disdainful gaze was emotionless. It turned its palm over and pressed down with shocking power. The Eternal Knight Hierarch took a step forward, and the smoke cloud divine spear collapsed, blocking the demonic god's palm. With a bang, he was forced back several steps. The corner of his mouth was stained with blood, showing his unshakable power. The demonic god moved again. Marquis Triumphant Return and the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor blocked it together. With a loud bang, blood splashed all over the sky. Both of them were severely injured and were sent flying. 17 miles away, Ningqian also felt the sudden appearance of a powerful aura. His expression changed, and just as he was about to go and help, he suddenly staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood. At this moment, Ningqian, who had burned his origin to fight Wu Guan, had finally exhausted his strength. He was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Seeing a crack in the river, Ningqian's palm condensed powerful vast origin energy and his figure flashed. It came for his life. At this critical moment, a sword shrouded in demonic qi appeared and blocked Wu Guan's palm with a loud clang. Good friend, I'm late. The white-haired figure with the demonic mark between his eyebrows appeared. Xia Zi and Luofei appeared at the same time. They supported Ningqian, who was staggering. Go and save them. Ningqian leaned on the sword and looked at the two of them, saying weakly. What are you doing here? Xia Zi asked worriedly. It's fine. Go quickly, or it'll be too late. Ningqian pushed Xia Zi away and barely managed to summon the last of his strength. The Yama divine weapon's brilliance sublimated to the extreme. Its light was unprecedentedly dazzling. Seeing that his good friend had made up his mind, Xia Zi sighed. He had to endure the pain in his heart and quickly rushed forward with Luofei. Do you think you can escape? Ningqian's eyes were cold. He swept out the blood jade sword and blocked the path. If you want to stop me, you have to get through me first. The Yama King's divine sword swept across, blocking the bloodshed divine sword. Fresh blood dripped down from Knowing Fate's arm, dyeing the sword and his red robes red. Marquis Ningqian, how long can you hold on? Ningqian snorted and stepped forward. The cold light became more and more ruthless. The red clothes moved the sword. Although the sword was still fast, it gradually lost its sharpness. Ningqian, who had run out of oil, had reached the final stage of his life. At the same time, in front of the space vortex, the Eternal Night Hierarch, Marquis triumphant return, and the Golden Staff Imperial Preceptor joined forces to fight the demon god. They were also seriously injured and were gradually losing their strength. With the faith of half of the divine land, the demon god was unshakable. His every move shook the heavens. At this moment, Xia Zi and Luofei finally arrived. The demonic sword activated the endless demonic qi in the emperor's body. The sword reincarnated and the world darkened. With a loud bang, the emperor's mouth turned red. He moved the sword again and the demonic qi surged for thousands of feet. Scroll of the Moon, Silent Moonfall. Luofei operated the Scroll of the Moon at the same time. The moonlight sprinkled down and there was endless silence. In an instant, birds stopped singing, flowers stopped fragrant, and time seemed to have stopped. We can't fight anymore. Retreat. The demon god was blocked for a moment. Xia Zi waved his sword and cut open the battle. He took the 3 injured people and quickly left. Luofei condensed her palm and made another move. Then, her beautiful figure flashed and left with the 4 people. The demon god waved his hand to disperse the successive sword and palm attacks. He looked coldly at the disappearing group of people and gradually dispersed. 17 miles away, the battle had reached its final moment. The light of the Yama divine weapon dimmed, indicating that Ning Chen's fire of life was about to be extinguished. The demonic qi swept over and took Ning Chen and Meng Xuanji away. He swung his sword and said, "Luofei, take them and the abbot away." "Yes." Luofei responded and moved to the other side of the battle. She forced Hua Zhuang to retreat and took the abbot away. "Xia Zi, you really betrayed the divine religion." Looking at the white-haired man in front of him, Bian Jiang couldn't hide the killing intent in his eyes. He didn't believe that an outsider would be loyal to the divine religion. Now, it was true. Xia Zi didn't care. The demonic sword moved and his white hair danced. His demonic qi shocked the world. They collided and both were forced back several steps. The emperor didn't linger and retreated, turning into a stream of light that flew away. The battle stopped and peace was restored behind the great array. All that was left was a scene of devastation and blood that dyed the ground red. Chapter 378. In the Jiming Marquis residence, Xia Zi and Luofei returned with the injured people. Everyone was covered in blood, telling of the tragedy of the battle. The power of the extreme sky formation was beyond their expectations. It suppressed everyone's cultivation and made it difficult for them to use their full strength. Although they found a way to break the formation, they were unable to condense the power of faith into a demon god. Meng Xuanji's back was hit by Zhong Qianqiu's palm. Her vitality gradually dissipated. No matter how much Luofei tried to inject her true yuan, it was useless. Ning Chen looked at the unconscious woman with unconcealable sorrow in his eyes. At this moment, the exhausted phoenix body could no longer support itself. Drops of phoenix origin and phoenix blood dissipated. With one last look, Hongyi's life faded away and she fell silently. Ning Chen. Xia Zi's pupils shrank. He went forward to support the former. "Good friend," his last words were so soft that they couldn't be heard clearly. Only the emperor in front of him heard it clearly. His heart was in pain as if it was being cut by 1,000 knives. In the end, he still couldn't let go of the heavy burden on his shoulders. He left them with the last hope. He never raised his arm again. Ximing, Ximing. When did he ever know his own fate? In the Qizhou mountain range, in the Taotia's stomach, after the clone's vitality disappeared, the main body was affected. His aura also weakened rapidly. Even the Taoist formation couldn't hold him back. The sound of the Tai Guqin was faintly discernible. Dao Kuei played the strings with both hands and tried his best to protect Su Yi's vitality. However, the souls of the two bodies were connected. The gradual disappearance of one indicated that the life of the other was also coming to an end. In the Marquis residence, the door opened. A white-clothed figure flashed through and took the two people who were dying. In the blink of an eye, she left quickly. Her speed was so fast that the people present didn't have time to react. When they came back to their senses, she had already disappeared. It's Mu Qingxue. Xia Zi was shocked. Where was she taking them? She was worried, so she quickly followed in the direction where the former had disappeared. The two streaks of light, one in front and one behind, widened the distance between them. Mu Qingxue, who had mastered the travel scroll, was so fast that even the emperors in the three disasters couldn't catch up. In the Heavenly Sky Academy, the flowing light stopped. Mu Qingxue appeared and pushed open the door of the wooden house. A trace of indescribable pain flashed through her beautiful eyes as she pleaded, "Teacher, please save them." In the wooden house, the headmaster raised his head and looked at the two people brought by Mu Qingxue. He sighed softly and said slowly, "This girl can be saved, but Ning Chen can't be saved." Xia Zi, who had just rushed over, trembled when he heard the teacher's words. He suppressed his grief and said, "Teacher, please save Miss Meng's life." His good friend had been trapped by love all his life. If he could save Miss Meng, he would be able to rest easy on the road to the Yellow Springs. The headmaster raised his hand and the great righteousness surged and gathered around Meng Xuanji. At the same time, the last bit of phoenix blood flew out from Ning Chen's chest and entered the girl's heart meridian, helping to repair the damage. Not long after, the headmaster stopped and said tiredly, "All right, take her back." "What about him? Is there no other way?" Mu Qingxue asked. Before the headmaster could speak, a purple and white figure appeared out of nowhere in the wooden house. He glanced at the young man in red whose vitality was almost undetectable and said faintly, "His origin is exhausted, and his spirit is injured. Sages can't save him." Then, Luo Xingqian looked at the headmaster and narrowed his eyes. He said, "I didn't notice you when I first came to the Divine Land. Sorry for not recognizing you." The arrival of an unknown powerhouse made Xia Zi's expression turn cold. He said, "May I ask who you are?" "Luo Xingqian, a friend of your Marquis." Luo Xingqian's mouth curved slightly. Although he was smiling, he still gave off a feeling of indifference. Then, Luo Xingqian walked to Ning Chen. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. The sword just now was really wonderful. What a pity. With a complicated look, the purple and white figure dispersed. When he left, he sighed softly in his heart. It was really a pity that he couldn't try such a dazzling sword. "Headmaster, can't we save him?" Just as Luo Xingqian left, Xianyin moved and an illusory figure appeared. He looked at the red-robed man on the ground and asked seriously. Dao Kuei appeared in the academy. After 1,000 years, the two strongest powerhouses of Taoism and Confucianism met for the first time. Without any greetings, they went straight to business. "We can't save him." The headmaster nodded and replied. Jiang Wangji was silent. After a while, he sighed deeply and said, "Then let's do as he said. Sink this soul into the blue frost valley and freeze it forever." Xia Zi's expression changed. He was really angry and shouted, "Are you letting him suffer forever?" 3 souls were separated and one was frozen. The other 2 souls couldn't be freed. Once they woke up, they would experience the pain of being frozen. They wouldn't die, but they would live a life worse than death. Jiang Wangji suppressed the pity in his heart. His expression gradually turned cold. He said, "He hasn't finished cultivating the No 2 life scroll. He can't die now. This is his wish. Headmaster, let's do it." Xia Zi was furious. He waved his hand and the demonic sword appeared in his hand. Demonic chi filled the sky. In the bone-chilling lake, Hongyi slowly sank deeper and deeper, becoming more and more blurry. Not long after, she completely disappeared in front of their eyes. On the split ice surface, the lake water once again froze. A cold wind blew and snow covered it, leaving no trace behind. Miss Mu, thank you. As he spoke, a brilliance gathered and Dao Kuei appeared. He looked at the lake with a slightly gloomy expression. This step was left behind by Ning Chen. Perhaps, he had already predicted his ending a long time ago. When Mu Qianshang saw the figure that appeared, he was shocked. Dao Kuei, Jiang Wangji. The inheritance of the heavenly pavilion of compassion sword was the Taoism of the past. Regarding the leader of the Taoism from 1,000 years ago, the ancient books and stone walls of the heavenly pavilion of compassion sword were left with the thickest ink. Mu Qingxue did not say a word. He turned and left. After 2 steps, he disappeared. Jiang Wangji sighed softly. The Tai Xianin appeared and the Taoism demon sealing formation fell from the guqin. It turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the lake. A demonic cultivator came to take Mu Qingxue away. In the Qizhou Mountains, in the stomach of the Taotai, the Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation forcefully preserved the vitality of the knowing destiny state. The soul that left the body was frozen and did not dissipate. It gave the body a slight chance of survival. The knowing destiny state was the last path left for himself. Although it was extremely difficult, it was the only path that could be taken. Dao Kuei stood aside and used the Tai Xianin to activate the life and death scrolls. He was the last hope. The unconscious knowing destiny state had 2 souls still. The life that was forcefully preserved would have to endure the most extreme pain in the world. This was the path that he chose. Once he stepped on it, he would have to bear the pain. In the Weiyang Palace, Xia Zi had been kneeling outside the door for 2 days. No one dared to persuade him. Xia Xinyu and Ning Shi stood outside the room with tears in their eyes. They did not dare to step in. Such a big change in the manner of the knowing destiny state could not be hidden from the Zhang Sun in the Weiyang Palace. Most of the time, the Zhang Sun did not say anything, but it did not mean that he did not know anything. As the empress of the Xia dynasty, he had seen too much. It was not easy to hide from him. Xia Zi was possessed by the devil. The burden on the knowing destiny state was several times heavier. The Zhang Sun saw it all. He did not say anything, but he knew better than anyone. Now that the emperor had returned, the knowing destiny state could not hold on anymore. He sank into the 1,000-snow lake and slept forever. The emperor was wrong. He was wrong because he was kind. He was wrong because he was possessed by the devil. He was wrong because he put the burden on his friend. It was too late for him to return. With a creak, the door opened and Qing Ning walked out. When she saw Xia Zi kneeling outside the door, she couldn't hide the pain in her eyes and said, "Please go back. Her Highness won't see you before he returns." Xia Xinyu and Ning Shi's tears fell silently. They knew that the Empress was really heartbroken this time. No one knew if he could come back. However, the Zhang Sun would never take back what he said. Unless the knowing destiny state came back, they would never see each other again. Chapter 379. In the study of the Jiming Marquis residence, the place where the Jiming Marquis used to meditate was now empty. He was no longer there. As usual, Ruoshi served him tea. Her tears fell drop by drop, wetting the paper on the table. Daylily, who had been recuperating for many days, walked out of the room and looked at the crying woman in the study with dim eyes. Love was always the most depressing thing. On the western front of Great Xia, the Evernight army had been pushed out of Great Xia's western border under the relentless attacks of the 3 dynasties. They were advancing westward and were not far from the Eternal Night cult. The effects of the extreme sky array were becoming more and more obvious. The days were shortened and the nights were lengthened. In just a month's time, there were less than 8 hours of daylight left. The world was in a state of panic and people's hearts were constantly changing. With Xia Zi's return, the emperor's heart was no longer as benevolent as before. He took on the burden left behind by Jiming and suppressed all the rebellions with his demonic sword. Rivers of blood flowed in the cities. People's hearts were unpredictable in troubled times. When benevolence could no longer stabilize people's hearts, only the sword in hand was the best solution. The famous sword of the Confucian school, the 3-foot autumn water, placed in the Haowu manor never appeared again. The emperor could no longer return to the past. The emperor's sword, the symbol of benevolence and righteousness, was destined to be covered in dust forever. After the third soul that was suppressed by Yama returned to his body, he forcefully suppressed the 2 demonized souls and maintained his last bit of sanity and lucidity. Xia Zi did not know how long he could hold on, but before he demonized again, he would do his best to complete the task his good friend entrusted to him. According to Ning Chen's judgment, when the day completely disappeared, it would be the day of Yama's descent. Judging from the current rate of increase of night, Evernight would arrive in less than 2 months. In the battle of the extreme sky array, the flaws of the array had been found. However, with the suppression of the array and the obstruction of the demonic gods formed by faith, it would not be easy to successfully break the array. It would take about a month for the 3 dynasties to reach the eternal night cult. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor and the Abbot of the Crossing Temple also needed time to heal. The final battle would be held in a month's time. Whether or not Yama's descent could be stopped would be decided in this battle. Whether the Divine Land would win in the end or the end of the world would soon be revealed. While the Divine Great Land was in chaos, Yishui Han, Yaman, and the others from West Buddha's homeland had to hide their whereabouts because of the Calamity Fire's injuries. They had to wait for the Calamity Fire to recover before they could discuss the matter of building the 4 Cardinal God Tower. Luo Xingqian didn't care about the 4's decision. He walked alone in the Divine Great Land, looking for opponents he was interested in. Luo Xingqian stopped in front of the skyscraping matrix in the west. After a short pause, he stepped into it. He wanted to see how powerful the matrix that Marquis Jiming and so many cultivators of the Divine Prefecture could not break through was. Not long after the purple and white figure entered, the sound of a sword rang out. The broken sword and the white-robed figure also entered. Desolate City's Sword 1, experienced in the mortal world. He could not bear the suffering of the common people and bore his sword to prove his sword heart. Another 7 or 8 minutes later, boundless light descended from the sky, converging and taking form. The 4 extremes dark heaven entered the formation alone. There were no coincidences in the world. 3 powerful cultivators of the present age entered the formation one after another. Their cultivation levels were different, and their goals were different. But at this moment, the world saw hope once again. In the formation of divine light, 3 figures entered one after the other. They moved quickly to the west. The extremely fast brilliance disappeared in the blink of an eye. The origin of the divine beasts led the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to surge in the sky. The endless power of faith continued to gather from various dynasties in the west, intensifying the power of the formation. The deeper the 3 went, the more they felt the pressure of the formation. It was as heavy as a mountain, and it was constantly increasing. What a strange formation! Luo Xingqian's eyes flashed with surprise. No wonder Marquis Jiming and the others failed. Such a formation was indeed a nightmare for warriors. At this moment, evil energy descended from the sky. Figures of hell Azuras appeared one after another, blocking the path ahead. Child's play. Luo Xingqian snorted. He turned his palm and condensed vital qi. Vigorous genuine qi surged out and the 3 figures of demons collapsed instantly. The evil qi dispersed and disappeared. However, just as Luo Xingqian continued to move forward, thunderbolts fell from the sky. Divine soldiers and heavenly generals punished lives with halberds. hundreds of thunderbolts and thousands of divine soldiers appeared. More and more heavenly palace soldiers appeared with halberds in their hands, surrounding the intruders. Luo Xingqian frowned slightly. He waved his hand and the star mark appeared. He drew the bow and arrow. Majestic chi gathered and formed a vortex. With one arrow, hundreds of heavenly palace soldiers collapsed and disappeared without a trace. Clang! The sound of metal and stone colliding was heard. The halberd was waved but was blocked by the tip of the finger. Immediately, the finger condensed into a sharp point and broke out. The divine general dissipated. The divine soldiers descended from the sky and the halberds were at the same time. Luo Xingqian condensed his finger and shook the divine blade. Although he was not at a disadvantage, it was difficult for him to escape in a short period of time. At the same time, Xian Tian and Jian Yi who entered the formation also encountered great trouble. The flame divine general appeared and the evil god from another world appeared, completely blocking the path ahead. Two swords appeared and shone brightly. The divine general collapsed and the evil god scattered. However, in the blink of an eye, the fire gathered together and the evil chi condensed again. Sword style, sky-toppling sword. When the sword style was executed, the formation trembled. It was a sword style that surpassed the blue. However, it was different from the blue sword style. The sky-toppling sword destroyed the fire instantly and could no longer gather together. The sword moved forward. Just at this moment, the horizon changed again. The Yin Qi scattered and the Yin soldiers took the path. A magnificent army with thousands of men and horses stepped forward. After breaking through the endless obstruction, the three of them finally felt that something was wrong. They knew that they might have fallen into an illusion. They calmed their hearts and concentrated to find a way to deal with it. This is really endless. The clear sword led the way and cut down 4 evil gods. Before they even had the time to take a breather, the halberd came again. Xian Tian waved his sword and shook off the cold sword in front of his eyes. He used the momentum to retreat and leaped into the sky. The clear sword's radiance rose endlessly. The ultimate move appeared for the first time. Void extinction. When the ultimate move appeared, thousands of swords fell from the sky like rain. They flowed endlessly. In an instant, the area within 1,000 feet was devastated. The shadows of the evil gods dissipated completely. A sword light pierced out and the illusion shook. The three of them simultaneously pushed their sword arts to the limit. They condensed their essence into a single point and used their strength to break through the illusion. With a bang, the illusion dissipated. After leaving the illusion, the three of them finally became serious. This was just an illusion, but it had consumed so much of their essence. It could be imagined that the dangers ahead would be even more difficult to deal with. As the three of them broke through the illusion, Bai Jiang opened his eyes in the center of the formation. A cold light flashed in his eyes and the black aura dissipated. He instantly vanished. He hadn't thought that someone would try to break through the formation so quickly. Moreover, they had come separately. However, if someone came to throw away their lives, he naturally welcomed them. At the same time, within the Blackwater Army's camp, Xia Zi, who had temporarily replaced Marquis' victorious return, received a report. His expression changed. "What is it?" asked Luo Fei. "Someone is trying to break through the formation," said Xia Zi gravely. Luo Fei frowned. This was troublesome. Only they knew of the formation's flaws. If they rashly rushed in, they would only put themselves in danger. "Should we save them?" asked Luo Fei softly. "No." Xia Zi calmed down and shook his head. Right now, peak experts were extremely precious. Before the final battle, they absolutely couldn't allow any more accidents to happen. "I hope they can find a way to break the formation themselves." Luo Fei sighed. Xia Zi's eyes flickered. He hoped that this was the case, but it was almost impossible. There weren't many top experts in the world, but smart people like Fan Lingyue and Ning Chen were even rarer. Up until now, including him, these people who had entered the ultimate heaven formation together still didn't understand how Ning Chen could see the flaws in the formation. Some of the things that Ning Chen knew were sometimes inconceivable and hard to understand. At this moment, a red light flashed in the tent and a red-haired figure walked out. Looking at the white-haired sovereign, he narrowed his eyes and said, "It's you." Seeing that the person in the tent wasn't the knowledge Marquis, Wan Fengchen's heart sank. A bad premonition arose. Only Ning Chen knew how to contact him. Now that he hadn't appeared, there was no doubt that something had happened. Xia Zi gave a simple explanation of what had happened recently. Time was of the essence, and he urgently needed the support of the four extremities. After hearing this, Wan Fengchen deeply sighed. Suppressing the sadness in his heart, he nodded. Did Rong Lu suspect anything? Xia Zi asked with a solemn look in his eyes. He's never truly trusted anyone, so it doesn't matter if he's suspicious or not. The most important thing is that I'm still useful to him, so he won't easily fall out with me, said Wan Fengchen. Be careful. After all, he's an expert who can enter the third calamity at any time. Once he makes trouble for you, he won't be easy to deal with, warned Xia Zi. Yes, I'll be careful. Last time, Ning Chen forced him to use a forbidden technique, and his body was heavily injured. Although his injuries and cultivation base have recovered, his strength is clearly not at its peak, said Wan Fengchen. Xia Zi nodded. 1 month from now, King Haowu's estate will be waiting for the four extremities. Definitely, said Wan Fengchen. With that, his red robes scattered and disappeared. After Wan Fengchen left, Xia Zi walked out of the commander's tent. He looked toward the distant north, an unprecedented firmness in his eyes. His good friend had already done everything he could. The rest would be up to him. Within the tent, Luo Fei sighed. The friendship between men was truly not something a woman could understand. Xia Zi wasn't a bloodthirsty person. Now that he had regained his reason, he had put away all his benevolence and forced himself to become emotionless. As for that cold-blooded Jiming Marquis, he had spared no expense to leave behind enough power for his good friend, preserving their final hope. In this chaotic world, the human heart was the most difficult thing to trust. The kings and marquises of the Grand Xia were able to trust each other so unreservedly, entrusting their lives and hopes to each other. Even in death, they hadn't wavered in the slightest. Unfortunately, they had still returned a bit too late. Their meeting in the extreme celestial formation had become an irreparable regret. Only now did she understand why the divine religion, at its peak, had been unable to defeat the Grand Xia, which had been riddled with holes by the northern Meng's iron hooves. The Grand Xia's Weiyang Palace's Empress Changsun was truly the most admirable woman in the world. She had single-handedly raised the kings and marquises of the Grand Xia. Bai Jiang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes turned cold. The Nether King's aura around him sublimated to the extreme. His feet moved, and in an instant, he rushed forward again. Luo Xingchen moved at the same time. His figure was illusory, and the afterimages were like dancing stars. Rays of arrow radiance flew down from the afterimages and trapped Wu Guan's body. Is it that simple? Bai Zhang's sword aura changed direction, and thousands of revolving swords met the descending arrow. Amidst the rumbling, endless aftershocks rippled out, and the arrow dissipated. Divine destruction. Wu Guan held his sword horizontally, and the Nether King's move appeared once more. Endless black chi surged around him, and a berserk pressure soared into the sky. Rings of divine might rippled out, illuminating the rising moon in the sky. The blood-red light shone brilliantly, and the formation resonated. The three origin source light pillars boosted the might of this move to its peak. The terrifying might suppressed the world. Even from 1,000 miles away, one could feel this extreme aura of destruction. Within the formation, Xiantian and Jianyi both sensed the destructive aura coming from the distance. Their expressions changed, and they immediately realized that other than them, there was someone else charging into the formation. The two of them didn't hesitate at all. They took a step forward and soared into the air. Sword light flourished, and from thousands of miles away, they rushed toward the distant battlefield. The extremely resplendent sword light pierced through the barrier and rushed over from two different directions. Seeing this, Luo Xingchen leaped into the sky. Borrowing the power of the two swords, he drew his bow and nocked an arrow. A crimson arrow light appeared. It was extremely ferocious, and it surged out. Two swords and an arrow intertwined and turned into a blazing red light that collided with the Nether King's move. With a loud bang, everything collapsed. The terrifying aftershock spread out for dozens of miles. Luo Xingchen and Bai Jiang, who bore the brunt of the impact, flew out with blood all over their bodies. They were both severely injured. On the other side, Jian Yi and Xiantian were also affected by the aftershocks. Their qi and blood were in turmoil. Although they weren't severely injured, they still felt uncomfortable. Wu Guan was caught off guard when the three of them worked together to fight to a draw. At this moment, the three of them realized that it was much more difficult to defeat the person in front of them in this formation than they had imagined. Outside the formation, night fell. The moon in the sky became brighter, and a scarlet light illuminated the world. The Nether King's power reflected through the moonlight and descended upon the divine continent. The extreme heavens might increased rapidly, and a faint layer of blood color lingered on the formation. Even the sovereigns outside the formation could feel the powerful oppression. Demonic sword. Xia Zi waved his hand. His sword moved, and his body moved. He leaped into the sky, and a demonic aura rose around him. The light on his sword shone brightly, covering the scarlet moon in the sky. Reincarnation. The reincarnation sword slashed toward the formation below. The surging demonic aura in the dark night separated heaven and earth, pointing the way for those who were lost. With a loud bang, the formation shook. Within the formation, the three of them sensed it at the same time. They no longer hesitated and quickly retreated. Bai Zhang's eyes darkened when he saw this. He condensed vast origin energy in his palm and sent out a powerful palm strike. Luo Xingchen flipped his palm to block the attack. The corner of his mouth was dyed red again, but he didn't stop and quickly retreated. Outside the formation, Xia Zi slowly descended and quietly looked at the formation. His expression was calm, and there wasn't a trace of fluctuation. He had already led the way. As for whether the people in the formation could escape or not, it would depend on their luck. After a quarter of an hour, three figures rushed out one by one. Their clothes were dyed red, and they were in a sorry state. The three of them looked at each other, then shifted their gazes to the white-haired young man in front of them. "Thank you. Did you meet the demonic god?" Xia Zi asked. Luo Xingchen frowned. What demonic god? He had seen many celestial soldiers and generals, but he hadn't seen a demonic god. Jian Yi and Xiantian were also puzzled. They also didn't understand what the demonic god was talking about. Seeing their expressions, Xia Zi sighed inwardly. It turned out that it wasn't the power of the demonic god. In the end, they weren't able to reach the end. "Do you know something?" asked Luo Xingchen. "This isn't the place to talk. Come with me." Xia Zi collected his thoughts and responded. Then, he turned around and walked toward the camp of the Blackwater Army. The three of them had failed to break through the formation, so they also wanted to know what was going on. Thus, they followed. In the Blackwater Army's main tent, Xia Zi explained what they knew about the extreme sky formation to the three of them. Right now, it didn't matter which dynasty or region it was. As long as they could stop the Nether King from descending, they had to fight for any power. The three of them frowned when they heard this. They hadn't expected that after spending so much effort, they would only be able to wander around the formation. They were still far from the center of the formation. How did the Jiming Marquis calculate the location? Asked Luo Xingchen. I'm not sure. When the Jiming Marquis was mentioned again, Xia Zi's eyes flashed with undetectable pain. He didn't even have time to say anything before he couldn't hold on. I still underestimated him. With the addition of these three people, the battle strength they had gathered was at its peak. Facing the Nether King, no accidents could happen. This was their last hope. Whether they could bring peace back to the divine Great Land depended on the result of this final battle. Chapter 381. The flames of war were merciless, destroying the divine land that was already riddled with holes. The allied army of the three dynasties advanced westward at all costs. They were determined to defeat the Eternal Night sect in the shortest time possible. The battlefield became a harvester of human lives. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of soldiers and civilians died in the war. The divine land was in a state of war that had never been seen before. Both sides seemed to have gone mad. They kept pouring in new forces to fight for the final victory. Death and fear spread endlessly, becoming a dark cloud that shrouded the entire divine land. The Great Xia, the Northern Meng, and the Barbarian Dynasty, the three most powerful dynasties in the divine land, attacked the divine land at all costs. The Eternal Night sect finally showed signs of weakness. This colossus that had existed for countless years had a terrifying foundation. After the Marquis of Jiming had used up a large number of their top experts, they still managed to hold on under the fierce attacks of the three dynasties. In the imperial city of the Great Xia, many experts gathered. The people who were in seclusion to heal also came out. If they succeeded in this final battle, it would be a blessing for the divine land. If they failed, it would be a nightmare for the world. There were less than 4 hours left in the daytime. The blood moon in the sky was frighteningly bright. The terrifying power of the god of hell could be clearly felt even outside the skyscraping formation. Everyone began to realize that the time of the god of hell's descent was close. In the Haowu Palace, a report of victory came, symbolizing that the war had finally come to an end. The news quickly spread throughout the divine land like water. Everyone was shocked and sad. But no matter what, the war that had been going on for several years was finally over. It's our turn. In the Haowu Palace, Xia Zi stood up and looked at the figures in the hall. After this battle, no one knew how many people could come back. As long as they could stop the god of hell's descent, it would be worth it even if they couldn't come back. We've finally come to this point. The hierarch of the Eternal Night looked at the west. For this battle, many people had been sacrificed. They could not afford to lose. They could only succeed, not fail. I'm getting impatient, Luo Xingchen said with a faint smile. Saint Xian Tian looked at the young man in front of him and sighed. There's no need to say any more. Wan Fengchen raised his hand to stop Wan Fengchen from continuing. What happened in the past was no longer important. Maybe after today, they would never be able to come back. Everything that happened in the past could only be discussed in the underworld. Originally, I didn't want to come. Unfortunately, I couldn't endure the torture of my good friend. I wonder if it's too late to regret it now. Jianghua laughed. Heh. Wan Fengchen lightly smiled and said, it's really lonely to walk alone on the road to the Yellow Springs. I have friends to accompany me, and I have someone to talk to. That's true, said Jianghua with a fake smile. Ba, it's time. Everyone, let's set off, the abbot of Du Yi Temple interrupted. Yes. Everyone stood up. All of them had different faces. Perhaps they didn't know each other in the past, but now, they were all comrades in arms with a common goal. They were no longer separated by territories, realms, or even positions. In the next moment, streaks of light shot out of the Haowu mansion like shooting stars. They were so bright that the entire imperial city could see them clearly. Chang's son walked out of the Weiyang palace with tears in his eyes. He had to come back alive. In the west of the Grand Xia, streaks of light gathered outside the extreme sky Grand Formation. One figure after another walked out. The top experts of the world had gathered to break through the formation. This battle would decide the fate of the entire Divine Prefecture, and even the entire 5 regions. The Eternal Night Hierarch, Xia Zi, Luo Xingqian, Marquis Victorious Return, Luo Fei, Jian Yi, the Abbot of Du Yi Temple, Jian Bodhi, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor, Wan Feng Chen, Jiang Hua, Princess Xihua, Duke Qinghua of the Sudden Thunder Dynasty. A dozen top experts connected their auras to resist the might of the extreme sky Grand Formation. The Eternal Night Hierarch and the others who had broken through the extreme sky Grand Formation before walked at the front, following the path that knowing destiny had calculated. They didn't have much time. They only had less than 4 hours. Once night fell and the blood moon rose, the power of the Grand Formation would multiply, and their chances of success would be minuscule. 15 minutes after they entered the formation, lightning fell from the sky, and the heavenly palace appeared. Thousands of divine generals descended to the mortal world, and illusions appeared again to hinder their progress. Let me do it. Save your true origin and maintain your best condition. Princess Xihua walked out and waved her delicate hand. The Joyous Union Bell appeared. The Joyous Union Bell, which was ranked alongside the Golden Feather Centipede, displayed its might for the first time. The sound of the bell swayed, and multicolored light shone. Illusions appeared within illusions, and its power broke through the illusions. The space distorted, and the 2 illusions fought. Princess Xihua condensed her true origin and poured it into the Joyous Union Bell. With a bang, the illusions were broken, and the surroundings quickly returned to normal. After breaking through the illusions, Princess Xihua looked exhausted. It was obvious that she had used up a lot of her strength. After the illusions were broken, the group didn't delay. They immediately moved and continued forward. You really came. I have been waiting for you for a long time. At this moment, the black gas that filled the sky condensed, and a black-clothed figure walked out. He looked at the group in front of him and sneered. A month had passed, and Bai Zhang's aura had become even stronger. It was far stronger than when Ning Chen and the others entered the formation. With the support of the Underworld King's power, Bai Zhang's martial crown had transformed once again, surpassing everyone present. Ha, what a coincidence. I am also here to look for you. Luo Xingqian walked out and clenched his fist. Star Mark appeared, and the battle started again. Count me in. Xian Tian walked forward and calmly said. Jian Yi also walked out and said, we will delay him. You all go and break the formation. Be careful. Xia Zi warned. Without hesitation, he led the group forward. The 3 of you are really confident. Bai Jiang didn't chase after them. It's enough to deal with you. After saying that, Clear Sword unsheathed, and an extremely fast sword instantly arrived in front of Bai Jiang. Sharp killing intent threatened to take his life. What I mean is that you want to stop my king's descent with just those people. You are dreaming. Bai Jiang sneered and blocked with his sword. A jade-colored light surrounded his sword as it collided with Clear Sword's brilliance. To tell you the truth, you are even more annoying than me. Luo Xingqian pointed his finger and took a step forward, once again surrounding Bai Jiang. Bai Jiang didn't feel the slightest fear in the face of their pincer attack. He held his sword and his aura surged. He wasn't at a disadvantage at all. When Jian Yi saw this, he unsheathed his broken sword. An ancient wave streaked across the sky, and his sword slashed down. Pointless struggle. Bai Jiang pushed away the two people in front of him with a palm. Then, he slashed with his jade-colored blood, and the heaven-slashing sword shattered. Jian Yi fell to the ground and retreated 3 steps. Blood quietly dripped from the corner of his mouth. 3 against 1, but they still couldn't gain the upper hand. Wu Guan's ability to use the power of the Underworld King was truly shocking. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, the 3's encirclement instantly changed. Luo Xingchen took a step forward and broke away from the battle. Then, he drew his bow, and thousands of sharp lights rained down. Bai Jiang's pupils constricted, and thousands of spinning swords shot out. The swords rumbled and shook 100 li void extinction. The profound sky sword flow was majestic. It was powerful and deadly. Bai Jiang turned his palm to face the sword flow. At this moment, the broken sword's sharpness reappeared, and a sharp sword chi came pressing down. Wind and clouds appeared on the sword again. Wu Guan's eyes turned cold, and his jade-colored blood met the attack again. Although he couldn't store enough energy, he still forcibly blocked the broken sword. Ah! However, when his palm and sword blocked the attack, a silent arrow instantly appeared in front of him. Bai Jiang couldn't dodge it in time. He groaned and blood stained the sand. Since the start of the battle, Wu Guan was injured for the first time. His anger surged, and the aura of the Underworld King surged into his body. With a bang, he sent the 2 people in front of him flying. Xiantian and Jian Yi fell to the ground and vomited blood. They looked at Wu Guan in front of them with heavy hearts. They understood that this battle was going to be fought to the death. Just as the 3 were fighting bitterly, Xia Zi and the others encountered some trouble again. The formation changed, and a sea of lightning trapped them. It was quite different from when they first entered. Endless lightning fell as if there was no end. Seeing that time was running out, the abbot of Du Yi Temple and the sword Bodhi walked out. They used their Buddha bodies to open a path and buy time for everyone. Everyone, I wish you success. The dual Buddha body circulated to the extreme, and the revered Buddha body appeared. Dazzling golden light pierced through heaven and earth, cutting through the lightning and supporting a calm path. Many thanks. Xia Zi and the others said their thanks and continued to pass through the sea of lightning. Dangers and difficulties tested everyone's determination to move forward. The changing formation brought one crisis after another. Without the knowing destiny state, everyone could only use their strength to open a path and fight for a chance to move forward. At the same time, in the stomach of the Tao Tai in Mount Chizhou, the cultivation of the No-2 life scroll had reached the final stage. Dao Kuei opened the formation and used his knowing destiny state body to forcefully circulate the vital qi of the 2 scrolls. However, he was still unable to complete the last stage. The foundation required for the 2 scrolls, which were the most difficult to cultivate, surpassed all the other arcane tomes. Although the knowing destiny state had only been cultivating for a short time, it was still far from the foundation required for the 2 scrolls. Headmaster, I need your help, Dao Kuei said slowly. In the academy, the headmaster looked towards the north. His body slowly faded away. Not long after, an illusory figure appeared in the Taoye's stomach. Although it was not solid, it still made people feel an unusually strong sense of righteousness pressing down on them. What's the matter? The headmaster asked. The last step of the No-2 life scroll. He can't take it because his foundation is not strong enough, Jiang Wangji said seriously. The headmaster's old face turned serious. It was too late to change someone else to cultivate the scroll. At this moment, they could only forcefully improve the foundation of the boy. However, it was not easy to improve the foundation, especially now that time was tight and there was no time to find other ways. Now, the only way was to borrow time from the heavens with the origin of life and forcefully improve the foundation of the boy. Wake him up. This is a decision he should make himself, the headmaster said with a deep sigh. Jiang Wangji was silent. He had planned to wake him up after helping him cultivate the No 2 life scroll. He did not expect that he would have to wake him up in the end. For the sake of the world, they owed him so much that they could never repay him in this lifetime. The Tai zither appeared, and the sound reverberated. It reached the spiritual soul and awakened the sleeping knowing destiny state. With a painful groan, the knowing destiny state, who had not fully woken up, began to tremble. Even the strong knowing destiny state could not help but groan in pain. Chapter 382. Knowing destiny opened his eyes in a daze. A moment later, his divine sense came back like a tide, followed by the pain of his soul being torn apart. It made him feel that passing out was a relief. Hang in there. Jiang Wangji's eyes were heavy. He turned over his palm and condensed vital energy into knowing destiny's body to reduce the pain. However, the pain from the depths of the soul was not so easy to reduce. Although Dao Kuei tried his best, the effect was minimal. Blood kept flowing out of her trembling white robe, which showed how hard it was for the knowing destiny state. She bore the burden for the sake of persevering in her heart without complaint or regret. Ning Chen, your foundation is not enough. You need to consume your life to make up for it. Are you willing? The headmaster asked seriously. The difficult words came into their ears word by word. Dao Kuei sighed deeply and played the Tai Guqin. The 7 strings sounded together and the Taoist formation was opened again. The yin and yang swords flew out and the restrictive spell appeared. Knowing destiny's vitality was quickly stripped away. He groaned in pain and his black hair danced in the wind. 300 years in the Khanate realm and 500 years in the 3 calamities. Knowing destiny was infinitely close to the 3 calamities and his life was much longer than ordinary Khanate realm cultivators. Now that he was stripped away, 500 years disappeared in a flash. The headmaster raised his hand and the great righteousness surged. He activated the 500 years that knowing destiny borrowed from heaven and turned it into a 100-year foundation. He injected it back into knowing destiny's body. 500 years in exchange for 100 years. It was never fair to make a deal with heaven. However, this was the only way now. Time left no trace and he aged overnight. Knowing destiny's face changed slightly, his long hair was covered with frost. Strands of black hair turned white. The intertwining of black and white was very dazzling. Dao Kuei, I'll leave the rest to you. After the headmaster gave his last instruction, the virtual shadow dispersed and disappeared in a flash. Jiang Wangji looked at the trembling young man in front of him and felt sorry for him. Wasn't it too cruel for them to put such a heavy burden on him? From now on, in the few days left, the burden and pain this young man had to bear would surpass all of them. The yin and yang formation was activated with the help of the yin-yang ancient sword. The Taoist formation helped the knowing destiny state to break through the last hurdle of the 2 scrolls of life and death. With the foundation of 100 years, the breath of life and death continued to converge, turning into the cycle of samsara between life and death. The heavenly Tao was flawed, and the human Tao was regretful. The perfect cultivation technique had deviated from the great Tao. Above the 9 heavens, thunder rumbled, and divine punishment reappeared, punishing and cleansing the sinners. With the help of the zither, Dao Kuei played the 7 strings to open the sky. The sound of Tai spread out and covered the breath of the knowing destiny state, avoiding the fury of the heavenly axiom. While knowing destiny was trying his best to complete the 2 scrolls, Xia Zi and the others finally arrived at the center of the ultimate sky formation after passing through numerous obstacles. The swirling spatial vortex was right in front of his eyes. At this moment, in the sky above the formation, black feathers fluttered. Faith gathered and an illusory figure appeared. His face couldn't be seen clearly. Only a terrifyingly powerful aura circulated, shaking heaven and earth. The appearance of the demonic god appeared and blocked the path ahead, becoming the last and biggest obstacle for the group. Be careful. We might have to fight with our lives on the line, the Eternal Night Hierarch warned. Ha, now that's interesting. Duke Qinghua walked out and white lightning condensed. Glancing at the two people beside him, she said, Wan Fengchen, Jiang Hua, stop playing dead. Qinghua, your mouth is really unforgiving. Jiang Hua walked forward and waved his hand. Qing Yu appeared, a long and narrow blade with dazzling moonlight. Wan Fengchen also walked forward. The flowing light blood blade, which had been reforged by the two masters of heaven and earth, flew out. The three geniuses of the four extreme realms walked out at the same time. The three blades disappeared in an instant, forcing the demonic god to take his life. The swift blades that flew out with the wind turned into streaks of flowing light. In an instant, there were too many for the eyes to take in. They had already exchanged dozens of moves at extreme speed. Red maples fluttered, and blades were hidden in the maples. The demonic god raised his hand, and his divine power went wild. The red maples collapsed, and the blade light changed direction instantly. It didn't clash head-on, but turned back and pressed forward again. The three blades were also light and swift, each faster than the last. The three geniuses moved with their blades, and the people moved with their blades. The younger generation has already grown to this level, the Golden Staff Imperial Advisor's eyes flashed. They're about to surpass us. Empress Shihua took a step forward, and the joyful union bell in her hand soared into the sky. Its ringing echoed through the grand formation, and a boundless illusion descended from the sky. Heaven and earth changed, and the wind assisted them. The three of them moved even faster. One blade flashed past, followed by another. Their swift blades were bewildering. Devil's sword, bury the heavens. The demonic god was lifted away, and its divine power rose once more. Wild waves spread out, suppressing the sharp blades. When Xia Zi saw this, he used his devil sword to meet the attack. Luofei followed closely behind. Her hands glowed, and moonlight illuminated the world. The might of the heavenly book appeared, protecting the emperor. The Eternal Night Religion Master also joined the formation. Scarlet lightning surged from his smoke cloud divine spear, blocking the demonic god's might. The three of them attacked together, and the ringing of bells resounded through the grand formation. With a bang, the shockwaves caused the three of them to retreat several steps, barely managing to block the demonic god's attack. Marquis' triumphant return also moved. He raised his military blade, and the sound of battle rang out. A vast military might slashed down. Law of life, one law of heaven and earth. The Golden Staff State Preceptor also used his technique to help. The Golden Staff shone brightly, illuminating the universe. The two techniques combined and slashed at the demonic god. Black feathers drifted, and a cold glint flashed across the demonic god's eyes. The power of faith around him erupted, and converged in front of him, forming a protective barrier that blocked the might of the two techniques. After the technique landed, the blade's edge shivered again, and the killing light was as swift as flowing water. The three prides used their blades without any gaps, advancing one after another. They continuously rotated and restrained the demonic god's might with all their might. The Eternal Night Religion Master, Luofei, and Xia Zi blocked the attacks and protected the three prides. Empress Shihua urged the joyful Union Bell to help, while Marquis' triumphant return and the Golden Staff State Preceptor counterattacked. They attacked and defended with tacit understanding, and there were no openings. The battle was in a stalemate. The demonic god's might was unparalleled. The 9 of them worked together, and even with the suppression of the grand formation, they still managed to block the demonic god's shocking might. Time passed slowly, and the sun was about to set. There was less and less time left for everyone, and the attacks of the 9 became fiercer. This was the last chance. No one dared to be careless, and no one dared to give up. If they failed, it would be the end of the divine prefecture. Seeing that the time was almost up, the Eternal Night Religion Master raised his vital essence to the peak and switched from defense to offense. He took a step forward, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts shot out. The Divine Prefecture's #1 powerhouse finally showed his invincible demeanor. Crimson lightning surged, and the divine spear was raised to the sky. The area within a radius of 1,000 feet turned into a world of blood and lightning. The true power of the third calamity rose to its peak. Once the three calamities reached perfection, it would be the pinnacle of the human world. Quickly break the formation. The Golden Staff Imperial Teacher vomited another mouthful of blood and said weakly, "Yes." Knowing that there wasn't much time left, the Eternal Night Religion Master's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward and gathered his true essence, supported by the divine weapon, and blood and lightning surged. Xia Zi and Luofei's figures flickered, and they arrived behind the Eternal Night Religion Master. They gathered true essence and poured it into the demonic god's might. Extreme lightning, sacrifice to the heavens. The blood and lightning fell, and the space collapsed. The whirlpool in the space shattered, and the extreme sky grand array continued to collapse. The brilliance of the three divine beasts' origin light pillars that pierced through the sky quickly dimmed. Antares guarded the heart, and the eternal night gave instructions for 100 years. It was supposed to be 100 years of despair, but today, with the joint efforts of the divine prefecture and the four extremities, they finally succeeded and successfully stopped the apocalypse. We finally succeeded. Looking at the extreme sky grand array that was gradually collapsing, the Eternal Night Religion Master, Xia Zi, and the others sighed. Wrong. You failed. At this moment, a noble yet cold voice sounded. The moment the sun and the moon alternated, the blood moon shone brightly, and the whirlpool that should have collapsed suddenly appeared in the sky. The next moment, a terrifying aura that made people despair pressed down. Black feathers fluttered in the sky, and the world trembled. A black figure slowly descended. His black hair danced in the wind, and his handsome face looked cold. His eyes were as dazzling as the stars, without a trace of color. They were holy and cold, and they made people feel a bone-deep fear. The Lord of the Underworld, the Lord of the Seven Ultimate Heavens, the Supreme God who created the 5 regions, had finally arrived in the Divine Prefecture. His footsteps landed lightly, and the heavens and earth found it difficult to withstand his divine might. They collapsed, and huge cracks appeared across the Divine Prefecture. Earth fire spewed out, and mountains and rivers shifted. It was an apocalyptic scene, and the mortal world was in chaos. Humans, you have disappointed me once again. The Lord of the Underworld said. His cold and emotionless voice resounded across the entire Divine Prefecture. The filthy human heart had finally angered the god, and he had come to the world again. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.